and is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Well, good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. Yes, my friends, to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Oh, look at that. Well, we've got a lot to talk about. It's just, I honestly, I titled the show like the way that I did because I just didn't want to do another Epstein thumbnail, but I can't lie to you guys. So much in regards to these freaking files. I don't see how this isn't going to be the topic of conversation for, maybe the rest of the year. I mean, there's just so much stuff in there. Also, Howard Lutnick was questioned today about those emails that we talked about maybe 2 weeks ago, where he and his wife and their kids went to the island to have lunch with Jeffrey Epstein. I have intentionally waited to watch the clip because it's about 4, maybe 5 minutes long. I wanted to watch it with you guys. So, if I could ask you for a favor, hit that like button, hit the thumbs up, hit the red pill, whatever it might be. No matter what platform you're on, I do appreciate you being here. Ooh, good Lord. All right, without further ado, please sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to get into it in just a moment. After this, the rules of money are quite literally being rewritten right in front of your eyes. And those institutions that control the financial system are not waiting. They're not warning, and they are not wishing. They're acting. Right now, buying gold and silver at an unprecedented pace. You see, they're preparing for something, but the question is, are you? And for nearly a decade, Noble Gold Investments has helped thousands of people protect their wealth with physical gold and silver, because as that world shifts to hard assets, the window to act is closing. So let Noble Gold show you how simple it is to protect yourself and your family. And while everyone else is reacting to the news, Noble Gold clients are already positioned. They understand that when the rules change, you need assets that don't depend on the system. So visit noblegoldinvestments.com/redpill78 and download your free wealth protection kit today. Once again, that's noblegoldinvestments.com/redpill78. The rules are changing. Make sure you're ready. And when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, my friends, welcome back. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. We have a lot to discuss, so we are going to get right into it. First of all, let me just clean up my tabs here. This is just an interesting side note, but based upon President Trump's efforts to clean up the federal government, reduce red tape, today a sweeping plan was just initiated, wiping away the foundation that supported quite a few regulations that were put in place under the Obama administration. This is dealing with the Green New Deal type stuff, but these were regulations that required certain actions be taken in regards to greenhouse gases. This was a so-called endangerment finding of 2009. And what Obama did was to label 6 greenhouse gases as a threat to public health and welfare. Now, those threats have been found to be innocuous. They are now going to be overturned. And the finding at the time gave the Environmental Protection Agency the legal authority to limit emissions coming from power plants and vehicles. This essentially amounts to the largest act of deregulation in the history of the United States, Lee Zeldin said. The final rule is going to be made public this week, and the rule removes the regulatory requirements which force these various organizations to measure, report, and certify and then comply with federal greenhouse gas emission standards for motor vehicles. It repeals associated compliance programs, credit provisions, reporting obligations for industries. It's really going to open things up and make it a lot easier to do business. I mean, one of the biggest problems we have in the United States of America is obviously the production of energy. And then pretty much everybody drives a car. This should ultimately bring down the price of creating those cars. Now, the new rule is not going to directly overturn regulations on power plant emissions, but it's a step in the right direction. President Trump began the process to get where we are right now on the day that he became president again, when he directed the EPA to determine whether or not these findings should have been in the it should have been in place in the first place. And it was July when the EPA first made the proposal to rescind those findings. Now, the report that was written by Lee Zeldin and the EPA suggested that officials did not name estimated removing of the findings, but it would reduce costs of compliance by about $1 trillion. So across the board, not only cost of your vehicles, but just the cost of the power that you're using at home, all of it should go down theoretically. But as we all know, once these people start getting your money into their pockets, they generally are loath to let it go back. But more energy drives human flourishing, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum said. Energy abundance is the thing that we have to focus on, not regulating certain forms of energy out of production. President Trump is scheduled to announce an executive order which would direct the War Department to buy electricity from coal-fired power plants, and President Trump has made no secret of his support of wiping away these regulations that are currently constricting America's ability to produce energy. He said, "My administration is committed to unleashing American energy, especially through the removal of illegitimate impediments to the identification, development, siting, production, investment in, or use of domestic energy resources, particularly those being oil, natural gas, coal, hydropower, geothermal, biofuel, critical mineral, and nuclear energy resources. An affordable and reliable domestic energy supply is essential to the national and economic security of the United States, as well as our foreign policy. And simply put, Americans are better off when the United States is energy dominant." So I know a lot of people have been paying quite a bit more for electricity in the last several years. Every time the power company can, they seem to tack on some new fee, something else that is going to be picking directly out of your pocket. Need to say thank you so much to Lee Walden. Good to see you, buddy. He says, "Ahoy, Zach, Miss Lisa, and crew. Where is our warrior?" Oh, dude, I can't tell you how busy I have been with these freaking files, dude. Like, if you don't see me on the air, I am quite literally pouring through emails. The way the DOJ has them actually arranged, like, there's a couple of different places. There's a couple of websites that people have made. There's one called Jmail, but even still, when you look at that, you're going to get a list, and then I have to go looking at every single individual email. Then I'm pouring through Twitter to see if people have already clipped out that particular email. Anything I can do to lessen my workload is awesome. If somebody wants to make a transparent background of Tina Peters and send it to me, I will put it up immediately. I've been bogged down, buddy. Anyways, thank you very much for reminding me again, Lee. Also, thank you so much to Patriot714 for picking up that 12-month bronze tier subscription over on Pilled before the show even began. I really do appreciate it. But I also wanted to let you guys know that the cases against Letitia James and James Comey are not over. And earlier today, with a brief in the Fourth Circuit Court, the Department of Justice has sought to revive both of those cases. So let's go ahead and take a look at the case documents itself. So in the in the situation of the United States versus Letitia James and the United States versus James Comey, the Department of Justice has filed this 58-page brief, which deals with several pieces of previous legislation, kind of just solidifying the existing case law, showing that the Department of Justice and the Attorney General of the United States has got the power to basically put whomever she wants into a position if it has not yet been filled. Because right now, I think we've got something approaching 60, maybe more than 60 U.S. attorneys whose positions have not being put forward for consideration in the Senate and the Judiciary Committee. But they say that Congress has provided a series of overlapping statutory tools to deal with vacancies. And the Attorney General may appoint an interim U.S. attorney to this 120-day term. And under certain circumstances, there are also other ways of designating officials to perform the functions of a U.S. attorney in the Federal Vacancies Reform Act and in the statutes that confer on the Attorney General the broad authority to delegate litigation authority to her subordinates. So here, the Attorney General invoked one of those tools, Section 546A, which is how she appointed Lindsay Halligan to serve as the interim U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. This is where she obtained and signed the grand jury indictments against James Comey and Letitia James. The district court, however, held that the district court's authority, where it applies, ousts the Attorney General of her appointment authority under 546A. That holding mistakenly aggrandizes the district court's appointment authority at the expense of the executive branch, which is where the Constitution assigns authority to prosecute crime. The court's holding adds extra textual limits on the Attorney General's appointment authority that are nowhere to be found in the statute, contravenes the practices of administrations of both parties since the statute's inception, and needlessly creates interbranch conflict where the statute provides for harmony. There can be no dispute the president can remove even a judicially appointed interim U.S. attorney, yet under the district court's review, the executive branch has no authority. Following the expiration of an interim U.S. attorney after their 120-day term, the appointment is made by the president, and the president may remove them at any time. So the district court compounded those errors by imposing the strong medicine of dismissing indictments duly returned by two grand juries. The Attorney General, even apart from Section 546A, has broad authority to employ subordinates to litigate on behalf of the federal government and to prosecute crime. The appointment error alleged here, therefore, boils down to the idea that the Attorney General cited the wrong statute in authorizing Halligan to seek and obtain the indictments at issue. Even if that paperwork mistake was legal error, it was not one that prejudiced defendants, and it has, in any event, been cured several times over by Attorney General orders ratifying Halligan's actions before the grand juries and her signature on the indictments, so the court should reverse this. I think the legal justifications that the Department of Justice is bringing are wholly sound. I mean, this is a problem that we seem to have over and over and over again, lower courts seeming to believe that they have a greater level of power than perhaps the executive branch or of the Department of Justice and obviously the Attorney General themselves. So whether or not the Attorney General's appointment of Lindsay Halligan is lawful, they are suggesting that it is. And they're also saying that the appointment of Lindsay Halligan as interim U.S. attorney was not invalid, and we can only have it one way. So then they use all of the justifications from these prior court decisions, the precedent and the history and tradition of the court. They go through and they make the case to say that what was done in the district court was incorrect. It must be reversed. Therefore, the cases against Letitia James and James Comey must therefore move forward. And I'm hoping that it allows them to bring Lindsay Halligan back in as a member of the Department of Justice working in whatever aspect Pam Bondi would want her to. Of course, this is now going to take some time to have it decided in the Fourth Circuit, and I'm sure that we'll hear about it at some point in the very near future. Now, someone, Filet Adinkina, don't know who this guy is, but he asked Grok, what would that mean? The DOJ brief argues that the Attorney General can appoint successive interim U.S. attorneys aiming to overturn the lower court's dismissal of criminal charges against former FBI Director James Comey and New York AG Letitia James. If successful, it would revive both cases, potentially leading to trials. So we'll see how that goes. I hope that they have great luck, because I believe that they are correct. Now, we also have the unsealed affidavit from Fulton County which goes through exactly what the FBI was looking for and the justification for their seeking it. It's a 22-page sworn affidavit that was submitted by FBI Special Agent Hugh Raymond Evans in support of achieving that search warrant. The affidavit supports a search warrant for the records, materials, and evidence related to alleged violations of federal election laws concerning the handling, the custody, preservation, or processing of 2020 election records in Fulton County. Now, it also outlines the probable cause for believing that evidence of federal crimes would be found at that location when they looked. The document also details suspected breaches tied to the management and storage of 2020 presidential election ballots, documents, and all related materials. The federal statutes potentially implicated include those governing election integrity, record retention, and prohibitions on tampering or improper handling of election-related items. So the raid at Fulton County targeted their election warehouse, resulting in the seizure of paper ballots, voter data, election records, and other materials from the 2020 general election. And the affidavit was, of course, used to obtain the judicial approval from a federal judge based on that sworn evidence presented by the FBI. The operation involved many different individuals, senior level from the Trump administration, of course, including DNI Tulsi Gabbard. The FBI search warrant was delivered. It was sworn under penalty of perjury, and Agent Evans presented it to a federal magistrate. All of it is pretty standard. Now, if you'll remember, when we first got word that they were going in there, they were, of course, seeking more than 700 boxes of ballots and related material that were supposed to be in that warehouse. They knew exactly what was there, and they knew exactly what to expect. As I told you last week, the now former special agent in charge at the Atlanta field office, a man by the name of Paul Brown, who no longer is employed by the FBI, sent essentially a warning, a tip-off to Fulton County, specifically laying out exactly what they were seeking, the exact number of boxes that they suggested they would find when they got there. And that gave Fulton County a little bit of lead time to potentially destroy evidence. Now, we also know that the Fulton County chief records guy, who has spoken on a number of occasions, I played some clips from him, he also mentioned that somebody tipped him and others off to the fact that there would also likely be arrest warrants coming. And he said that that gave them another type of tip-off. Well, here is the problem. When the FBI executed this search warrant in Fulton County to take possession of all of those records I just mentioned from the affidavit, it turned out that not all of the records were present when they arrived, meaning that in between the time that Paul Brown tipped off Fulton County and the new FBI agents, special agents in charge from the Atlanta field office arrived, some stuff had come up missing. Lee Walden says, here's my request for pictures of Tina Peters for Zak to share on his thumbnail. Thank you very much, Lee. Appreciate you. Now, several of the items that they were looking for obviously were always going to be difficult, if not impossible, to produce because we knew that there was an indication that they never existed in the first place. As an example, Fulton County only provided 9 of the 148 tabulator zero tapes for the advance voting tabulators, even though there were repeated attempts to compel them to provide more. Now, they had come forward before and said that they simply didn't exist. Right there, that's a violation of the law. They provided tabulator tapes for almost all of the closing tapes for advance voting, which show the total votes cast and the results for each specific tabulator. But as we've talked about in the past, Georgia rules and regulation require that those tapes all must be signed by the precinct manager and 2 witnesses. However, none of those required signatures were present on the tapes that were handed over. And there are also tapes that are supposed to be printed when you first get there in the morning and then again at night when you are leaving. So those advanced voting tabulators were instead brought back into the county's election warehouse, where memory cards were removed from those 148 tabulators, and then they were closed out on 16 separate tabulators. All of the ballot images produced during the original ballot count on November 3rd, 2020, are also going to be difficult to produce. During a request for admissions that was conducted on behalf of plaintiffs Curling versus Raffensperger, Fulton County at that time admitted that they had failed to preserve the majority of ballot images from in-person voting. There we go. We have another crime. And last week, Fulton County officials also filed an emergency motion in federal court asking to have those election materials, which the FBI seized during their search warrant, returned to Fulton County. Apparently, they are still very nervous about the FBI getting their hands on them. During that course of that motion, Fulton County filed under Rule 41G of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. Now, 41G states that a person aggrieved by an unlawful search and seizure of property or by the deprivation of property may move for the property's return. But the FBI search warrant was, of course, signed by a magistrate judge, so there was nothing unlawful about the seizure of anything that was taken from that Fulton County warehouse. Now, according to Georgia State Election Board Vice Chair Dr. Jan Johnson, too many questions remain unanswered, and she posted on X that under no circumstances should the FBI return anything that was included in that original search. Now, right here in that request for admissions, we can see in Curling versus Raffensperger, they ask Fulton County to admit that the majority of ballot images from in-person voting were not there. They didn't hold on to them, and Fulton County admitted it. That was a huge thing right there. But when the emergency motion by Rob Pitts, who is, again, the chairman of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, filed this in federal district court, they didn't request the 700 or so boxes that the FBI knew they were supposed to be getting. Instead, they request the return of only 656 boxes, which is roughly 40 boxes short, which seems to be what happened after they were alerted by Paul Brown before the real FBI showed up and got a look inside that warehouse. Now, Jan, again, said do not return Fulton County ballots and election documents to Fulton County until they have all been copied, reviewed, and investigated. In a separate post, she said, commissioners are not in charge of elections, or are they? Fulton County commissioners were inside restricted areas of the election records warehouse while the FBI was trying to conduct a criminal search warrant. Why did they bar state officials from entering? Were the commissioners trying to interfere with or obstruct an FBI investigation? What were those commissioners doing? Were they handling election records or ballots? Again, there were supposed to be 700 boxes of election documents. Where are those missing 50 documents? There's no documentation of who was entering or exiting through back doors of those restricted areas. Now, the director of Department of Registrations and Elections is a woman named Nadine Williams. She stated in an affidavit, Fulton County's 2020 elections materials are stored in over 700 boxes, each of which must be opened, searched, and sorted systematically to locate the majority of the documents requested in the subpoenas. This was her replying in the lawsuit Sherry Allen versus the state of Georgia. But according to Dr. Johnston and these media reports, and also the filing from Fulton County themselves, only 656 boxes were taken, which of course is now going to lead to speculation about the location of those remaining 40 to 50 boxes that simply don't seem to exist, because I can't imagine that the FBI would have went in there with the search affidavit openly stating they were expecting over 700 boxes, and then they leave with roughly 40 to 50 less than they were expecting. And they wouldn't have just left them there inside the warehouse. So the only thing that I can come to with regards to this is that Paul Brown, now former FBI, tipped off Rob Pitts and all of the other deep state swamp rats in Fulton County. They went in and they destroyed many dozens of boxes of election-related material because they were already in trouble, theoretically, at both the state and the federal level for a number of different election-related crimes. But perhaps those 40 to 50 boxes are the reason that no one has been allowed to look at the election records up until this point, and it required a search warrant from the FBI. They got rid of it, allegedly, in my opinion, so that they could not be implicated in an even greater crime than what they are already culpable for. Now, I would also like to show you this video that was just released by Patrick Byrne this morning. He says that on December 31st of 2020, also thank you to AOB22, enjoying listening to the show while I destroy documents. Dixie says, driving and listening. Thank you for all you do. Thank you, Dixie. Also, Filter Dog 1 says, thank you for going through these. I'm sickened by the snippets I've read. Yeah, it is definitely enough to make your stomach churn. It's pretty gross. So on the 31st of December, 2020, the Dominion guy in Fulton calls a shredding firm called AAA Security Shredding. Now, in this video, we're going to hear a recorded conversation of the Dominion guy asking for the shredding truck to come on site so that they can dispose of something. When the truck was loaded and left, Patrick Byrne and his people followed it. They were able to stop the guy, and they got this driver to stop on the side of the road and dump all of the ballots in the garbage, at which time they were able to secure the ballots. He says the DHS arrived, and then the FBI came and told the driver, take the ballots, finish shredding, and then burn them, which means that the FBI, under President Trump's first term, which would have, of course, been Christopher Wray, wanted to make sure that Dominion's work was completed in Fulton County, Georgia.
AAA Security Shredding.
Hi, I need to get some information on a one-time shredding job. We're closing out a warehouse in Smyrna, Georgia, at the end of this year, and we've got about 3 pallets, 4,000 pounds of paper that need shredded.
Okay. May I get your name?
Yeah, my name is Tom Feehan, F-E-E-H-A-N.
So anybody who doubts the story, take notes, go dig, and you'll see that this guy's real. Smyrna, Georgia, that is real. The whole thing is real. This actually happened.
Okay, Tom. Just out of curiosity, how soon are you looking for this shredding?
Well, we have to be out of the facility at the end of the year.
Oh, so by January 1st?
Yeah.
Also, this is the truck right here. This is paper being loaded into the truck. There is their phone number right there. You can also verify all of that information online.
Okay. Let me see real quick here. 4,000 pounds.
So the 31st would be our last day that we'd be able to shred to accommodate it.
The 31st of this month?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any time between now and then.
Okay, so what we normally charge for your area is $65 a bin. However, that price goes down after 10 bins, so it would go down to $59. Like if you had 11 bins, the price would drop down to $59.
Okay.
And then if you had 20 bins, let me write this down for my notes.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what we have a palletized right now, but we estimate it to be 4,000 pounds. So I don't know what that translates to in bins.
It's about 18 rolling bins. But here I can kind of give you an example.
Sure.
One of our rolling bins holds about 8 to 10 banker boxes, or 225 pounds.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, I guess.
Yeah, about 18.
Okay. Well, I mean, those sound like reasonable numbers. My question is how could we set this up to be done before the first of the year? And secondly, how would you work out payment? Because if you needed like corporate credit and all that, I could probably fast track it. But a lot of people, our offices are in Denver, our corporate office. But I can also pay credit card and expense it, which is if that works. I don't know if you take credit card.
Oh yeah, we take credit cards over the phone. That's fine.
Okay.
We are in Smyrna on the 31st. Is that too late?
No, I think could we get it in the morning? I'll be here.
Yeah, we can do it
what am I
first thing
talking
in the
about?
morning.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't we do it for the 31st?
Okay. is 8:30 a good time for you?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm in at 7. It doesn't matter.
Okay, and may I get the address?
It is 7,000 Highlands Parkway.
Okay, and that's smart. What's the zip code there?
30082, and we are Suite 160.
Okay, that's the first floor.
Yeah, it's ground level, and we have 7 truck bays in the back plus a ramp. And,
yeah, that's perfect.
We could bring the stuff right to. So I mean, they could just show up at truck bay 120 if they wanted.
Bay 120.
Yeah.
All right, so proof positive, the deal was made. Now, just to go into a little bit deeper from that affidavit, and this will be from Just the News. In that affidavit, Agent Evans details some of the reasons why it is necessary for all of this ballots and election-related material to be confiscated. All of this we have gone over on the show in the past. Now, Evans mentions in the affidavit that some of the claims about the election irregularities in Georgia in 2020 have not been substantiated. However, the ones that have been substantiated are serious enough to warrant the search warrant that we went and got. So, he said in the affidavit, Fulton County has admitted that it does not have scanned ballot images of the 528,777 ballots that were counted during the original count, or the 527,925 ballots that were counted during the first recount. That right there indicates a major loss of evidence. Now, Fulton County also confirmed that during the recount of votes, some ballots were scanned multiple times. Ballot images made available in response to public records requests show ballots with unique markings duplicated within ballot images. Remember what they would do in order to, because there weren't enough ballots when they did the recount. So what they would do is they would take the stacks of ballots, they would split them up, they would mix them up, and then they would rescan them, giving them the number closer to what they needed to actually have. But when you look at the actual scans of the ballots, you can see clearly that you've got similar ballots, the exact same ballots that are duplicated a number of times. Now, during the risk limiting audit, auditors counting the votes by hand reported vote tallies for batches that were inconsistent with the actual votes that were in the batches. Now, if you'll remember, Garland Favorito had done a presentation where he showed those yellow pieces of paper, and on top of those stacks of ballots, the person doing the count would write the tally for Biden and the tally for Trump. But for some reason, whoever it was that was counting these ballots and doing the tallies, they would just say 100 Biden, even though the true count in the stack would be, say, 56 for Biden and 44 for Trump, or other way around. I mean, sometimes it was, much more, sometimes it was much less. But the state's Performance Review Board reported that the Secretary of State investigators confirmed inaccurate batch tallies from the risk limiting audit. Another major problem with that is not mentioned here is that the people doing those incorrect tallies were also failing to sign the tallies themselves. So the reason you're supposed to sign is so they can go and check. If somebody does it incorrectly, they can hold them accountable. But they were knowingly doing it incorrectly, and they were intentionally not signing it so that no one could be held accountable. Auditors assisting in the risk-limiting audit reported purported absentee ballots that had never been folded or creased. That's a good one. You remember that? How is it that an absentee or mail-in ballot could never have a fold or a crease in it when the only way that the absentee or the mail-in ballot could get to the polling place for it to be counted with the tally of everything else is for it to be folded and then put inside that envelope? That would be required for the ballot to be mailed to the voter and for the ballot to be returned in the sealed envelope, requiring the voter's signature for authentication. And on the day of the deadline to report the recount results, Fulton County reported a recount totaling 511,343 ballots, which, as we have known, is 17,434 ballots fewer than the original count. The following day, Fulton County then reported a total of 527,925 ballots counted, which brings us right back to exactly where they needed to be even Steven with everything they had done before. So there are also witnesses that the FBI mentions inside this affidavit. In one witness statement, he was a top lieutenant to Raffensperger, and he acknowledged to the FBI that he was unaware of some of the corroborated irregularities and admitted that they were possibly problematic. The director of elections for the Georgia Secretary of State in 2020 was not aware of physical ballots not matching the number of ballot images. Witness 4 said a discrepancy like that would be problematic, but did not know if anyone went back and bothered to check. Witness 4 said during the hand count, they did not audit for issues like image discrepancies. He said the images are just duplicates. It would be more concerning if there were discrepancies between physical ballots and voter count. Wouldn't you know it? We just went over the fact that there was. The concern is less about the images and more about the ballots and the voter count. Very, very interesting. They've got all kinds of reasons to go in there. Let's see. Let's see where this is going, because it is getting pretty heavy. All right. Now, we are going to immediately jump into the conversation about Jeffrey Epstein, because we have a lot to talk about with regard to Jeffrey Epstein. Some people out there are not going to like this. And I got to say, in general, I really do like Steve Bannon. But the conversations that are coming out between him and Jeffrey Epstein seem to be getting worse and worse, especially with regard to his attitude towards President Trump. Now, I will give him this. This was not long after he left the administration. It was already reported that there was some type of disagreement between President Trump and Steve Bannon. However, in these messages here, it appears that Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein might have been working together to remove DOJ protections so that they could bring criminal charges against President Trump during his presidency. I'm going to let you make up your mind. I'm not going to call it one way or the other. We're just going to read it together. But these newly released messages between Bannon and Epstein show an exchange via text message in 2018, where they bring up the idea of having the DOJ's Office of Legal Counsel withdraw their long-standing memo prohibiting the indictment of a sitting president. Now, Epstein compares it directly to how the Bush-era OLC, the Office of Legal Counsel memos on torture, were later rescinded by Stephen Bradbury in 2009, stating to remove the prohibition on indicting a sitting president would be exactly the same as withdrawing the opinion on torture. Epstein jokes about Yoo memos, which are referring to John Yoo's infamous torture authorizations. Epstein pushes Bannon a little bit further, noting that Rothstein can do the same thing, echoing how the Office of Legal Counsel opinions on executive power in the war on terror were overridden. And this brainstorming session happened again after Steve Bannon had left the White House, or he was ousted, or he and Trump got into an argument. Not exactly certain of how it all went down, but he purportedly was in the midst of a feud with President Trump. Now, I will say this. A lot of people will say things in private that they never expect the public to read. And oftentimes they may say things in the heat of the moment when perhaps they're angry or they feel wronged that they never really intend to follow through on. People are emotional creatures, and I don't think that Bannon is immune from that. But they do suggest an effort to strip away immunity that President Trump would have been shielded with, and it was happening during the middle of the Mueller investigation. So we're not going to go through the whole thing, but that was the gist of it right here. Keep in mind that the Yoo memos on torture were set aside, and the same can be done for not indicting a sitting president. That's Jeffrey Epstein. To remove the prohibition on indictment of a sitting president would be exactly the same as withdrawing the opinion on torture. There is precedent. Steve Bannon says he will pull it. And then he mentions the thing about Rothstein. And then Jeffrey Epstein sends Bannon a clip of himself on what appears to be a mainstream media show. and he says that the Pope is wrong on policy. Jeffrey says, you're an honorary Jew anyways. And he says he's honored. I will drop the Christian in Christian Zionist. And there we go. Now, again, the majority of these conversations that appear to be detrimental to Steve Bannon when he's talking to Jeffrey Epstein, from everything I've seen, appear to be largely driven by Jeffrey Epstein. And as I've said before, Steve Bannon was hired to do this documentary and to do public relations for Jeffrey Epstein. I don't think that it is unreasonable to suggest that there are people out there who have jobs where they have to talk to and interact with people that they know are scumbags. And perhaps they have to oftentimes entertain the whims of the people who are paying them. I understand that Jeffrey Epstein, as a convicted pedophile, it's kind of a different realm than just having a boss at the office who you don't happen to like. But I do think that there is context that is necessary when looking at these conversations between Bannon and, of course, Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Howard Lutnick, the issue of Howard Lutnick, this I think is really important. So as Howard was stepping into this congressional hearing today to testify, of course, this was not supposed to be a testimony about his so-called friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, but that's definitely how it ended up going. A lot of people had questions for him about it, and as he was coming into the testimony, the only question that any of the media was asking him was about this meeting with Jeffrey Epstein. So Senator Chris Van Hollen has the opportunity to ask the question, and Howard Lutnick, of course, has the opportunity to answer. Let's go ahead and listen.
Why did the Epstein files?
Yeah, I want to go on record. I don't think Bannon, Elon, Trump, or even Howard Lutnick, I don't think that they are diddling kids. I don't think that in any respect. But I do think that, plenty of people knew what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. Maybe not fully, going back to 2012, 2013, who knows? I also think it is still possible that people who were having some casual conversations with Jeffrey Epstein could have also been gathering intel on him for future use. I truly do believe that the operation we're watching play out right now is not something that just began with President Trump's second term in office. This is a long-standing plan that has been plotted out, and I think that there are some precise maneuvers that have been necessary to put in place over the years to even get us to the point that we are right now. Let me see. Will to push forward says, Zach, it's really good. You're going through the files, etc., as much as you are with all the things going on. The details are getting really, really heavy, especially with writing. I haven't looked at these files on my own yet. Well, I appreciate that. Mostly it's kind of innocuous. You're seeing a lot of just, the similar emails repeated over and over. Not every single one of them has something really disturbing in it. However, when they do get disturbing, it's definitely the kind of thing that sticks in your mind. So we're going to listen to the entirety of this line of questioning between Van Hollen and Howard Lutnick.
Show you coordinating a meeting and planning a visit with Jeffrey Epstein on his private island in December 2012.
Thank you for the question. I'm glad to make it clear that I met Jeffrey Epstein when I moved to a house next door to him in New York, right? And I met him then.
I do want to say Howard looks kind of defeated. He doesn't look too happy to be in this situation. And who can blame him? I would not be happy about this either. But the one thing that does bother me is that Howard very specifically, when he was asked about this before, when he talked about, meeting Jeffrey Epstein with his wife and then saying, we are never going to see that guy ever again. It bothers me. It bothers me that he made plans, him and his wife both made plans to come meet Jeffrey on his island and have lunch. I know it's just lunch, but that does bug me. And I hope that he specifically addresses it.
The next 14 years, I met him 2 other times that I can recall. 2 times. And that is none for 6 years. So 6 years later, I met him. And then a year and a half after that, I met him and never again. Probably the total and you've seen all of these documents, of these millions and millions of documents, there may be 10 emails connecting me with him, probably about 10 emails connecting me with him over a 14-year period. I did not have any relationship with him. I barely had anything to do with that person, okay?
Now, the other thing that I will say, and I think that this is important, is that, you know, a lot of people make a big deal out of pictures where, like, you know, maybe Donald Trump will be out in public and, like, you know, Ghislaine and Jeffrey showed up. I mean, these, you know, Palm Beach billionaire society is like not a big scene. Okay, so these events would be taking place, people would be hanging out, you end up in the same place as somebody. I'm sure that every single one of us here has been in a situation where, say, we're out to dinner or we go to a party or we go to a friend's house and somebody shows up and we don't like that person, you know? But in the interest of civility, you smile and you nod, maybe you even shake their hand. It doesn't mean that you're friends with them, but it definitely means that you're just not going to make a scene. I think that that's like a measure of maturity. Certainly, you know, my father always said to me, if I know somebody doesn't like me, I'm going to make them shake my hand. I'm going to make them interact with me because I'm not going to be uncomfortable. And at this time, after Jeffrey Epstein, you know, after essentially Donald Trump had kicked Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell out of his club, he didn't want to socialize with them. But I'm sure that he enjoyed the idea that every time they saw him, their buttholes puckered just a little bit.
Secretary Lutnick, I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again. Did you, in fact, make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but...
See, and Howard, that's the most important part. Why go out of your way? Why make the effort? All right, I mean, you know the guy lives next door to you. You know that his behavior is unseemly. You know that you don't really want to hang out with him. You don't want to go to his house because you're not trying to get a hand job on a massage table. So why go out of your way if you're in the Caribbean to stop by his island? That's the question, Howard. I want you to answer that. And the fact that you say that you don't remember why you went, I don't like that. I really don't like that. And, you know, Howard Lutnick is obviously an intelligent and talented person. And it's very possible that despite this unfortunate lapse of judgment, even if nothing untowards took place, this is unfortunate and it was really, really unnecessary. It is entirely possible that Howard Lutnick is a good person and he is doing the right thing, and President Trump is using him in order to have certain things take place here in the United States. So it's in the president's hands as far as I'm concerned, but let's continue.
Mr. Secretary, again, as I said, there's not an indication that you yourself engaged in any wrongdoing with Jeffrey Epstein. It's the fact that you believe that you misled the country and the Congress based on your earlier statements, suggesting that you'd cut off all contact when, in fact, you had not. When you visited the private island, did you see anything inappropriate during that visit?
The only thing I saw with my wife and my children and the other couple and their children was staff who worked for Mr. Epstein on that island.
And you realize that, you know, this visit took place after he'd been convicted, right? I mean, you made a very big point of saying that you sensed that this was a bad person in 2005. And then, of course, in 2008, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution of a minor. And yet you went and had this trip and other interactions. Did you have a dinner in Epstein's New York City home in 2000?
Yeah, Deplorable D makes an excellent point, and this is why I brought that up earlier. I do think that it's entirely possible that, you know, anybody who was in Trump's second administration who had any form of contact with Jeffrey Epstein, but they were not involved with the trafficking or the abuse or anything like that, it is entirely possible that there was something else going on, like intel gathering or something like that. Because my investigation of Howard Lutnick, except for this one thing, shows that he is an honorable man. And that just like President Trump, he has every interest in not only setting America free, but also bringing the people behind 9/11 to justice. I mean, he lost his brother. He lost half of his company. I mean, terrible, terrible things.
In 11.
No.
So the information that suggests that there was a dinner with Woody Allen and Woody Allen's spouse at the Epstein residence, that's there's nothing to that. Is that right?
I actually don't know what you're referring to. There was, look, I looked through the millions of documents for my name, just like everybody else. Yeah. And what I found was there was a document that says that I had a meeting with him on in May, I think, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Not dinner or otherwise, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
All right. There's also a reference to the fact that Epstein had expressed an interest in meeting your nanny. Do you know whether Jeffrey Epstein ever met with your nanny?
No, I saw that. I had no idea what that was about. It had nothing to do with me.
No
as far as
interaction
I
at
know.
all with him on there?
No, as far as I know, no.
Would you, Mr. Secretary, be willing to ensure that the file is complete to share with this committee and the Congress your own records, any records you have that relate to Jeffrey Epstein?
I will surely talk about that. I hadn't thought about that. I have nothing to hide. Absolutely nothing.
All right. Well, like I said, really what it comes down to is the will of the president. The president is the boss. And if he wants Howard Lutnick there, then Howard's going to be there for a reason. I mean to say thank you to FOJC TV, who says, great show again. And Bad Bunny definitely lived up to his name. He certainly did. Certainly did. All right. Now, on that note, let's hear from the president's mouthpiece, Caroline Leavitt, because she directly speaks for the president.
Secretary Lutnick today was testifying on the Hill, and he said that he had visited Epstein's Island in 2012 with his wife and children, and that's after he said that he had cut ties with Epstein, and Justice Department documents show that he was in contact.
No, Matrox, it doesn't mean that he was turning out his nanny. The email in that he specified says nothing about Howard is sending us his nanny or anything like that. Jeffrey Epstein could, I mean, so what? The nanny would have been working directly next door to Jeffrey's New York home. Jeffrey Epstein could have been trying to incriminate Howard Lutnick or get a mole into his home. He could have been trying to compromise the nanny without letting Howard Lutnick know. I mean, if you'll remember, Jeffrey Epstein was pulling girls from Mar-a-Lago under Donald Trump's nose, and it wasn't until Donald Trump figured it out and then banned him from Mar-a-Lago that the process stopped. So it does not mean that Howard Lutnick was trying to turn out his nanny
with Epstein through 2018 over messages. So does the White House stand behind Secretary Lutnick right now, or given what he has said today, has there been any shift in how the White House is viewing Secretary Lutnick's performance?
No, Secretary Lutnick remains a very important member of President Trump's team, and the president fully supports the secretary.
Secretary Lutnick.
And there you have it. Howard Lutnick's not going anywhere. The president has made a decision, and I'm going to go ahead and stand behind it. All right, before we continue, I have a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, they can cancel your accounts, they can freeze your cards, they can decide what you're allowed to buy, what you're allowed to say, who you are allowed to support. Big banks and financial institutions have got total control over you, and they know it. And that's why financial independence matters more now than ever. So introducing Rumble Wallet. It's a wallet built for real freedom. With Rumble Wallet, you control your money. Not a bank, not a government, not a tech company. You can buy digital assets like Tether, Tether Gold, and Bitcoin all in the same place without permission, no middlemen, no cancel button. And when you want to support creators like myself or anyone else that you actually believe in, you can use that Rumble Wallet app to directly tip content creators securely, instantly, and without interference, and without anybody else taking a cut off the top. This is not a credit line they can't shut off. It is your wallet permanently, yours to protect for your future, for your family. And when the system fails, when institutions turn on their own people, financial sovereignty is the difference between security and vulnerability. Rumble Wallet is not about politics. It's about freedom, ownership, and protecting what's yours. So take control today. Download Rumble Wallet now and step away from the big banks for good. True ownership, true protection, and true financial freedom. You can use that QR code on screen, the link that you see in the chat on Rumble, or if you are not on Rumble, you can head directly to wallet.rumble.com, or you can download directly from the App Store on your phone because they have it for both Apple and Android. All right, continuing. And steel your reserves, my friends, because there is some fairly dark things today. But before we get into those dark things, I want to lift your spirits. Because first of all, here is one of those pictures that I was talking about, a social event with Donald Trump standing against a wall and Ghislaine Maxwell appearing to walk by. Now, of course, you know as well as anybody else here that many times pictures like this have been used to suggest that Donald Trump, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jeffrey Epstein were wonderful friends. I want to take you back to when the Epstein documents first started being released, and a very specific email that I showed you where Jeffrey and Ghislaine were talking about the dog who doesn't bark. And he said, I think the dog who doesn't bark is Trump. I told you at that time that was an indication that Ghislaine and Jeffrey believed that Donald Trump... Okay... Give it a second, and hopefully everything will start working again. Man. Okay. That's working. Okay, great. Am I back? I'm back. Okay, sweet. Can you confirm I'm back over on YouTube? Am I back on Foxhole? I should be back on Foxhole. Okay, great. Awesome. I think we're good everywhere, guys. Holy shit. I can't believe they're doing this to me right now. Hold on. I gotta fix the stuff in my OBS that went away. Man alive. I can't believe they just did that. Okay. So hold on. Let me get my Rumble chat up on screen. Where is it? Chat. There we go. Boom. And then Foxhole chat. No. Hild. There we go. Okay. All right. We should be good. We should be good. All right. Now I'm going to show you this FBI 302, which shows that Donald Trump called the Palm Beach police after Jeffrey Epstein was arrested and told them how happy he was that they were finally doing something about his predation of young girls. He also was very insistent on making sure that the FBI knew that Ghislaine Maxwell was Epstein's #1 operative. He said she is evil and to focus on her. Now, Trump told this detective that he was around Epstein once where teenagers were present, and Trump got the hell out of there. Trump was one of the very first people to call when people found out that they were investigating Epstein. He also said nobody could explain how Epstein made his money. They knew that he worked for Bear Stearns. He was also told that Epstein was kind of a technical guy that would make it happen, but you didn't want to know how. Now, none of the victims that the Palm Beach Police Department spoke with said they had sexual contact with other men than Epstein while they were in Epstein's orbit. And one time, this person who was speaking went out screaming. Prince Andrew, of course, was a fixture in Palm Beach, and he had no protection while he was there. The detective has done interviews in the past with a number of other people and victims, thought that the Palm Beach Police Department was paid off by Epstein, which was why someone went and did these interviews. He felt he needed to defend the Palm Beach Police Department. An interior designer told the Palm Beach Police Department that rooms in the Virgin Islands had been decorated for teenage girls. The detective contacted the Virgin Islands Police Department, but they were not helpful. In the end, when Epstein turned himself in to the plea to a misdemeanor, the detective was not notified, and he found out from the paper. So here we have, once again, full confirmation that President Trump was actually helping the police. Palm Beach, here is more from these documents. So after this, the private investigators began harassing and playing games with probably the detective. Epstein had someone go to somewhere and tell him these girls are just prostitutes. They are just happy endings. These are minor cases. Private investigators began pulling the police officers' trash. About 6 months after the detective retired, he was contacted by a private investigator who was represented by an attorney, maybe Dershowitz, who knows, who told the detective that he had some safety concerns for him. The detective was told that Igor, Epstein's trainer, had recently purchased a townhome, probably very close to him. The detective received a call about a target letter he had received. This individual told the detective that he doesn't have to worry because Epstein is not in Palm Beach anymore and that he sold his home. Detective stated that it was not true and it was a weird call. The Palm Beach Police Department referred this case to the FBI and introduced the victims to the FBI. Everyone was very motivated. Eventually, there was a lack of communication. Detective heard there was a discussion of a plea deal or a non-prosecution. Detective asked to speak with the U.S. Attorney, Alexander Acosta. Detective asked him if he was going to own up to what he promised when he was sworn in. Acosta said the defense had him very frustrated with the case. He said there was a lot of interest from higher up. The state did not want him to take it back. It took months to convince them to take it back. It was very disappointing that the system failed in this case. The detective was told that the non-prosecution would include a fund for counseling and medical. There was a hurry to make this case go away. After giving a $90,000 check, Epstein came back to someone's office. He talked about Harvard donations. Epstein just wanted to know about Redacted. It was like he was sizing this individual up. Afterwards, Redacted walked with Epstein to the lobby, and someone was there. She was like a statue, maybe Ghislaine Maxwell. Palm Beach Country Club is a Jewish country club. A lot of wealthy people are there, and they flock together. Mar-a-Lago is a mixture of everyone. Donald Trump told the detective that he threw Epstein out of his club. Trump called Palm Beach Police Department to tell him, thank goodness you are stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this. Epstein told him, Trump told him that people in New York were aware of it, and nobody seemed to care. So this bodes very, very well for President Trump, and hopefully all of the people who are still hung up on the idea that Donald Trump was trafficking children or raping little girls with Jeffrey Epstein, they will now realize that he is the only person who was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, or knew, rather, Jeffrey Epstein in a social sense, and cut him off before he became a sex offender. And then after he started being investigated, he spoke to the freaking cops. I wouldn't be surprised if he also tried to go to the FBI. He also worked with the attorney for the victims. Donald Trump is the only person out there who, in my estimation, business, banking, politics, or otherwise, that I can guarantee you is not a sex offender. Deal with it, because that's the truth. All right. Now, everything else is going to take some time to load up because it's the very first time. Now, in the case of the Norwegian ambassador, she was featured in Epstein's emails on numerous occasions. She and her husband were bequeathed millions of dollars for their child, which made me think that the child was actually Epstein's child. And she and her husband have both now been charged with corruption. Remember, just the day before, she was forced to resign in disgrace after it came out that she and Jeffrey Epstein were very, very close. Perlinator, I already talked about Bannon Epstein. That was like the first part of this conversation. So Jewel is this woman's name, Mona Jewel, and her husband, Terje Rod Larsen, a former diplomat and former president of the International Peace Institute, both face charges of aiding and abetting. The files that we've recently gotten regarding them show that he and them had a very cozy relationship even after he was a sex offender. Jewel is in these emails at least 33 times, and she was up until that moment working as the ambassador to Jordan for Norway. Now, in that will that Jeffrey Epstein drew up right before his 2019 death, in quotation marks, he left $10 million to the couple's children. Again, you don't just leave $10 million to somebody's random kids. I mean, you might leave $10 million to your kids if you have let somebody else raise them and you didn't want to admit to them that you were their father. But the foreign minister for Norway described the contacts that Jewel had with Epstein as a serious failure of judgment. So on Sunday, the foreign ministry announced Jewel had resigned from her position as ambassador to both Jordan and Iraq. And the contact with Jeffrey Epstein is what convinced them. Hold on. Am I still working over on? I am still working on Twitter. Good. Okay. The communications and the friendship that continued beyond Jeffrey Epstein's prosecution was, again, a lack of judgment, and that she was being not only suspended pending an internal investigation, but they were specifically looking into her links to Jeffrey Epstein's child trafficking. They said, "We have opened an investigation to clarify whether criminal acts have occurred. We are facing a comprehensive and, by all accounts, long-term investigation." So how fun that they actually charged her and her husband with corruption and aiding and abetting so quickly. It didn't seem like it took them very long to investigate at all. It appears from the files that they visited Epstein's private island with their children in 2011, with Rod Larsen later thanking Epstein for the trip and describing the island as totally unique. "We loved it," she wrote in an email. And then she said, "Mona sends a kiss." I'm pretty sure Mona was their daughter. The Epstein documents have also implicated others in Norwegian politics, including the Crown Princess Mette-Marit. Jeffrey Epstein said she wanted a baby with him, and former Prime Minister Thorbjorn Jagland, who is under separate investigation. And Jewel and her husband are best known for their roles in the Oslo Accords, which were written in the 1990s. So we're getting justice all around the world. Thomas Times 76 says, off topic, but this may be an update for baseless conspiracies. We are actually going to talk about Kurt Cobain's recently released brand new postmortem today, Thomas. So it is on topic for today's show, but yeah, we are definitely going to talk about it. All right, next. So we also have footage from Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony, which of course doesn't amount to very much. But her attorney says the only way you're going to get her to talk is if you give her clemency. A path to the unfiltered truth is clemency. Let's take a listen.
This is David Marcus, and I just wanted to introduce her and make a brief statement. So members of the committee, on my advice, Ghislaine Maxwell will respectfully invoke her Fifth Amendment right to silence and decline to answer questions today, even though she would very much like to answer your questions. She must remain silent because Ms. Maxwell has a habeas petition currently pending that demonstrates her conviction rests on a fundamentally unfair trial. For example, jurors lied during voir dire to secure seats on the jury, and the government promised immunity and then broke that promise. Newly discovered documents now demonstrate these facts conclusively. If this committee and the American public truly want to hear the unfiltered truth about what happened, there is a straightforward path. Ms. Maxwell is prepared to speak fully and honestly if granted clemency by President Trump. Only she can provide a complete account, and some may not like what they hear, but the truth matters. For example, both President Trump and President Clinton are innocent of any wrongdoing. Ms. Maxwell alone can explain why, and the public is entitled to hear that explanation. Thank you, members of the committee, for having us today. Ms. Maxwell can now proceed to answer her questions with the Fifth Amendment. Thank you.
And that's exactly what she did. She went through and she essentially said nothing at all. Now, we are next going to take a look at an email that Ghislaine Maxwell sent to Jeffrey Epstein on September 6th of 2012. And we've got it paired here with a tweet from Donald Trump on October 8th, 2012, just a month later. Now, in this email to Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell says, turns out Lynn forgot to tell me about toe children nicks. Children is spelled CHIDLREN. 1 month later, President Trump tweets out publicly, got to do something about these missing children, CHIDLREN, misspelled the exact same way as Ghislaine Maxwell. Grabbed by the perverts. Too many incidents, fast trial, death penalty. Now, obviously, this doesn't prove anything, but if we believe that President Trump has been involved in an organized plan to take down the satanic global pedophile ring that was running the United States of America and many other governments throughout the world, I find it highly interesting that such an unusual spelling of that word would happen in very close proximity to one another. Of course, Ghislaine in a private conversation, Donald Trump in a public tweet. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. In addition to that, we also have an interview with Representative Tim Burchett, where he discusses the implications of not only Ghislaine Maxwell, but the other co-conspirators that so far have escaped justice. Let's take a listen.
I think her attorney's advising her, as her attorney should. You know, she'll get clemency and she'll spill the beans, and I don't know. I don't see that happening. I see maybe she gets out early on good behavior and does a humongous book deal and probably ends up committing suicide by getting shot in the back of the head 5 times. Because this thing goes very deep, and the people involved in it are very powerful.
He just called her out for maybe getting arc-incited live on TV.
Wow, that is sort of shocking to even hear that. But yeah, it was a pretty messed up group of people that were doing these things, and no telling.
Congresswoman, are you among the members who got to see the unredacted files today?
Now, this is Lauren Boebert. Yesterday, several members of Congress, I don't exactly know how many, but Boebert was among them. Anna Paulina Luna was among them. Thomas Massey, Ro Khanna. They were able to come in and see the unredacted versions of the file. And they had some pretty strong reactions to it.
Yes, I saw some of them, not all of them, obviously. I'll be going back tomorrow to see more.
Any reaction on what you've seen so far?
I think that there's folks who are definitely implicated and co-conspirators. And, I don't think everyone there that was talking about underage girls being trafficked are victims.
Got it.
All right. That is very important for you to remember, because we're going to look at a couple of cases of women who have claimed to be victims but are not necessarily victims. Now, there is a bit of finesse that we're going to have to move through, threading the needle on that when we get to it.
Do you support any clemency for Ghislaine Maxwell? She was saying that
I do not. Okay. I think Ghislaine Maxwell should get more time, and she should definitely be in a harsher prison than what she's in. It's absolutely disgusting.
Got it. Thank you, Congresswoman.
Monster.
And are you able to see the DOJ unredacted versions?
I'm going to be going tomorrow. There's I think every member of Oversight has gone through so far, or is going to be going through so far. So yes.
And tomorrow will be your first time?
No, my second.
Okay. Is there anything you can share from what you saw today?
I've posted about it publicly, but some of the people that are in the most egregious redactions are claiming to be victims, and I don't think that they're victims if you're engaging in child sex trafficking.
Got it. Thank you, Congresswoman.
The Clintons are set to give
Yes,
their
ma'am.
depositions.
And I'm still.
Go ahead.
I'm still one of those that believes Epstein didn't kill himself, ma'am. I just don't think he did.
Well, Clinton's coming in. They'll give their depositions, we think.
I think that it's highly notable that she starts asking about the Clintons, and he interrupts and says, I'm still one of those people who doesn't think Epstein killed himself. Because who do you think would have had some reasoning to kill Jeffrey Epstein? Certainly the Clintons, but also a lot of other people, too.
No, if they're going to plead the fifth, have they hinted at anything?
No, ma'am, but there's a reason that they're not in prison, and the reason that he was in the White House for 2 terms and she was Secretary of State, because they are very slippery and they're very smart, and I think they're an evil pair. I think she's probably the brains behind the operation, but I don't think we'll get much on them. I know a lot of people are wanting us to get them, and it'll be great clickbait, I'm sure, but I think when it comes down to it, they'll either bail or they won't answer very many questions and be very evasive and be very smug, because in this world there are 2 forms of justice, those like the Clintons and for the rest of us. And unfortunately, I don't see them being, everybody says, we'll put them in handcuffs, all this stuff, all that's talk. The law's got to back you up on it. And we got to define what those laws were that they broke, and Congress cannot send somebody to jail. Oddly enough, a lot of congressmen probably should be in jail. But the truth is that we're not going to, I don't think it'll boil down to anything, and that's going to make a lot of people mad, but I believe that's the truth.
Just listening to you, I sense that you are deeply disappointed in the trajectory of this.
Yes, ma'am. I'm just deeply disappointed in Congress. We had a clear trajectory when President Trump was elected overwhelmingly, and Congress barely slipped in, and we have not followed the president's directions. And I feel like that will, in fact, if we do not regain the majority, it will be because of that. He ran on some pretty clear things: strong border, locking people up, and doing what's right. And we don't even codify his executive orders. We got to use trickery to do that, even in Congress when we have the majority. So, yeah, I'm disappointed in Congress, not in this president, but in this Congress, because we've not followed his direction. And I think many times, we've had the opportunity and we've just gone on to endless hearings. And Chairman Comer is great about these hearings. He puts them together. They're well structured, and everyone's allowed to ask their questions, and nobody's told not to or anything else. But I just don't see overwhelming the will of the Congress to do a whole heck of a lot. I think they just want to ease along and just keep drawing that check.
Yep. Very unfortunate, but Burchett is 100% correct. I love him. He is based. I will go on record and say that I believe he is definitely not a pedophile as well. I think he's great. Mighty Patriot says, have they called Mrs. Cheney to the hearings yet? She admitted they knew about Epstein. Did she? I know that No Name's wife admitted that they knew about Epstein. I don't remember Liz Cheney saying that. Maybe she did, and I just don't remember it. Darla, hello. Hey, Zach and Lisa. I'm here for the crime reporting, true crime reporting. But I have to say, I don't trust anything these elites say. Same with politicians. Yeah, well, that is an opinion you should continue to hold, because most of them are completely unbelievable. All right. Now, the question of whether or not Jeffrey Epstein is still alive. This has been one of the most tantalizing threads to pull on throughout the investigation of all of these files. Take a look at this one from April 14th of 2014. It's an email to Jeffrey Epstein, and the subject is body double. I have the body double, and I brought nitrile gloves. You are not allowed to use latex, and all containers you mix it in must be very clean so that you don't get other products that could be harmful on the skin. Sounds to me like they are talking about making prosthetics and appliances that could be taken from Jeffrey Epstein's features or body to be added to the body double, which would then allow that body double to look more like Jeffrey Epstein. Now, this is several years before he allegedly was killed in prison. However, much like politicians and a lot of other rich people, body doubles are the kind of people that you keep on staff and that you hang around just in case you do need a corpse, or just in case you need somebody else to show up to an event where you don't really want to talk to anybody. So I think that Jeffrey Epstein had a body double on staff, and I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that a body double is what we saw being wheeled out of that MCC unit in Brooklyn, New York. Because, again, after all of the identification of features on the body, it just did not look to me like Jeffrey Epstein. It looked to me like somebody who kind of looked like Jeffrey Epstein. There's more, though. Wait, shit, hold on. Edit, undo, close tab. Did I just have 2 of those? No. Okay, so close that. Close that. The next one on this same subject. These are handwritten notes that were found inside Jeffrey Epstein's prison cell after his alleged death. Now, these notes kind of look like an escape plan. You've got what appear to be diagrams inside the prison. You've got a number of nations that Jeffrey Epstein seems to be writing down, perhaps places with areas where he might be accepted or where he could escape to. The handwriting is rather messy, so there's a little bit of decoding that we're going to have to go through. But it appears, based upon these notes, that Jeffrey Epstein is plotting out how he's going to escape from jail, which, of course, a lot of people believe that's exactly what happened on August 10th of 2019. So these scribbled pages reference Red Notice, which is what the Interpol organization uses when a fugitive is on the run. Potential destinations, which include Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Nigeria. He's also writing about the logistics of travel, which include visas, banks that he could use to transfer money, guards that could be hired to keep him safe if he is on the run. In one page, he sketches out what appears to be a private airport with the name Brad written on top. Brad would likely be a private pilot that he would have hired to fly him wherever he wanted to go. Another simply states jail out equals 10. He also noted 3 things: blankets, AVR, which is what they call the cameras inside the prison. Remember, those cameras allegedly failed mysteriously on the night that he was murdered, escaped, whatever. And then METI. METI is the medical transport for the prison that he was in. So you would need to have, first of all, you would need to have the ability to, like, cover the body, which, remember, there was a report from the FBI where the people in the jail took supposedly boxes and then put it on a gurney and then covered it in blankets, and then that's what they smuggled out, and then Jeffrey Epstein left in a black vehicle. The AVR, you'd have to figure out how to shut the AVR down. Easy. You pay off the guards and then just tell them to go to sleep after they turn the cameras off. And then you got to make sure that the medical transportation shows up. So then they're the ones who end up driving you away. So the notes are all also written in multiple colors of ink, which means that this is something that Jeffrey Epstein was working on for some time while he was in the midst of spending some time here at the MCC. Once again, this makes it appear highly likely that Jeffrey Epstein was successful in getting out of the MCC, and it makes the official description and narrative of the suicide even harder to believe after seeing this. But wait, there's more. Take a look at this. Newly released documents from the FBI show that on the night the FBI arrived to investigate the scene, one of the FBI agents removed a hard drive from the jail's camera system. Remember, the camera system that allegedly failed on the night that Jeffrey Epstein left that prison, either in a body bag or just laying down on a gurney. Of course, this wiped all footage that was taken on the night that Jeffrey Epstein died, except for the footage that has been released by the DOJ and the FBI. But this right here shows that no matter what happened, what truly happened is that the FBI came in and took the only evidence. And it sounds like that evidence is never going to be seen by anyone. So, let's see. This individual advised that only one hard drive of the camera system was working at the time of the incident on August 10th. When a DVR went bad, none of the cameras recorded. There was a system failure of DVR2 on July 29th. And the motherboard failed on DVR2 on August 8th, 2 days conveniently before the alleged suicide. The hard drive failure occurred on August 10th, the day that he apparently died. After the incident, this FBI agent was asked about the cameras. There were 2 new hard drives to install, but installing the new hard drives would mean that all the prior data would be lost. The warden wanted video, and so blank was Told to start working on the system, the agent started removing the bad drives in order to rebuild the DVR. Agent advised, or individual that is redacted, advised that an FBI agent was the one who pulled the DVR. Individual also advised that he knew that by replacing both hard drives, the system would be wiped, and that he had advised personnel at the MCC of that. So, there we go. More evidence seeming to indicate that, of course, there was a plan to make this as unbelievable as possible. But wait, there's more. This is an email between, I believe, DHS, well, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the Department of Justice. And this is 2 years after Epstein allegedly died. In this email, they are talking about a personal meeting with Jeffrey Epstein. Right here, Tuesday, July 6th, 2021. LOL. Friday, I am on Arizona time through the week. So morning is same as you all Thursday. Epstein does live in Colorado, so he is 2 hours behind, though he has jumped on calls as early as 9 a.m. in the past. My only other thing Thursday is a debrief at 2 p.m. I have a debrief scheduled Thursday at 1 p.m. too, FYI. Oops, me too, 1 p.m. 1 p.m. same time, LOL. So the subject of the email is regarding Epstein, and they're talking about setting up a meeting with Epstein, and that Epstein is living in Colorado. Now, of course, there are other people with the last name Epstein, but don't you think that the FBI and the DHS and DOJ would have filtered out any emails that didn't have to do with Jeffrey Epstein? Bro, they're telling us that Jeffrey Epstein is alive, and at least in 2021, he was living in Colorado. All right. Oh, man. Sandasan says, I can hear Walter saying, they're going to kill that poor woman regarding the Guthrie fiasco. Or, dude, she kidnapped herself. There we go. Jep8863. Zach, what about the missing modified time in the video on that day? Also, what happened on the investigation? An obvious cover-up of the body switch. Where is Pam's accountability? Jeff is and has been alive. Well, I can't tell you on any of it. You know, I mean, they've never explained that missing time. Really, I think that they just segued into the drop of all of these files because they knew this was going to keep people busy for a long time. Don Lemon is not in jail, but that's because he got out on bond. Don Lemon now has to be tried, Johnny. There is an order of operations. However, Don Lemon was indicted, and there are likely to be superseding indictments against Don Lemon as well. All right, now, Thomas Massey, when he went in and saw those redacted Epstein files, you remember this one I showed you very early on. Someone wrote to Jeffrey Epstein and said, thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty. Turns out that that email was sent by a woman, and you can see the name is redacted. So Thomas Massey can't tell whether or not this was a victim or whether or not this was just a consequence of the algorithm that they're using to redact people's names.
About the little girl who was called a little naughty.
I did, and that was a woman that wrote that, and so it may be proper to redact it, and it may not be. I don't know. It seems like part of their algorithm for redaction was just to redact every woman in there, pretty much.
Yeah.
So we can't parse if the person who sent that was a victim or not.
Well, none of this is designed to be a witch hunt. Just because someone may be in the files doesn't mean that they're guilty. But there are very powerful people who raped these underage girls. It wasn't just Epstein and Maxwell, or showed up to the island, or showed up to the ranch, or showed up to the home knowing underage girls were being paraded around, and some of the sickening stuff in there about the violence. About the little girl who was...
All right, so just keeping in mind that this may have been a victim, this may have been a perpetrator, or it could have been a victim who became a perpetrator. Now, Another aspect that Thomas Massie was able to determine was the sender of the torture email, when Jeffrey Epstein responded and said that he loved the torture video. Turns out that that was a man by the name of Sultan bin Sulayem. Now, you can see in this picture from 2005, which appears to be a Victoria's Secret fashion show, Jeffrey Epstein and the Sultan are sitting next to each other right here. And if you don't remember that email, oh, here's another picture of them. Oh, no, this is AI. This is totally AI. Oh, man. But there is a lot of people, obviously, who are here. Just because they're at a Victoria's Secret fashion show doesn't mean that they are pedophiles or child traffickers or anything like that. Les Wexner is right here. He has, as we showed yesterday, been identified as a possible unindicted co-conspirator. His lawyer offered a proffer agreement where allegedly he spoke with the Department of Justice on the hopes that he would not be prosecuted in the future. I would hope that Les Wexner would be prosecuted just like anybody else who was actually abusing children, just like Jeffrey Epstein. But we also have an update on the jerky emails that I showed you yesterday. Now, I had mentioned that it was a chef by the name of Francis Derby. He also had a private restaurant that appeared to be invite only, which was something about cannibalism. But take a look at these emails right here. From Steve Hansen to Jeffrey Epstein in August of 2012. He says, Jeff, old saying, dog ate my homework. Well, the dog ate my beef jerky. I was looking for the beef jerky as I knew it was in my suitcase and then thought maybe I left it at the beach, only to find a small plastic bag near my dog's bed, hence no beef jerky. I will email Francis to make us some more as I need 6 to 8 ounces to send to the lab, and I'll forward Francis the info to send it to the lab directly. I'll try you later today. Who in the hell has beef jerky made by a private chef and then has it sent to the lab? You don't need to send beef jerky to the lab. Maybe you want to send human meat to the lab to have it tested to see what's going on with it. But here is another couple of emails between Francis and Jeffrey. Right here, Francis to Jeffrey in 2012. Why didn't we get jerky this week? Said you could do it until Friday. And then here, Francis emails Jeffrey again. Just wanted to touch base about jerky. Jeffrey Epstein said he was going to start eating regular food again, so he might be eating less jerky. Is beef jerky not regular food? I mean, I would consider beef jerky to be regular food. I certainly don't know anybody who's on like a jerky-only diet. But he continues and says, that said, he has 6 bags of it in the downstairs freezer for his next trip. Do you keep beef jerky in the freezer? I mean, beef jerky by its nature is preserved. It's dried so that it can be left out of the refrigerator, out of the freezer. You're not keeping beef jerky in the freezer, and you're not being forced to eat less beef jerky and only eat regular food. Again, I think this is kid meat. I believe it should be enough to get him through. Any other questions, please let me know. Thank you, Francis. So, yeah, I think that it is, I think it's kid meat. Wounds Are Us says, we have over 300,000 missing children, women and men that go missing every day. Why is Guthrie on a loop on the news? What are they distracting from? Fishy situation. I think that Guthrie is on a loop on the news because America has a fascination with celebrity. And the idea that a famous woman's mother could be kidnapped and not be found is obviously something that grabs people's attention. I don't think that it's strange because my entire life I have seen the news, quote unquote, latch on to a story like this when, to be quite frank, this kind of shit happens all the time, literally happens every day. And like you said, we got 300,000 missing kids just from Joe Biden's administration. Now, tens of thousands of those kids have been found. However, this happens all the time. It's like, you know, like a missing kid or something like that. You could be reporting on all of them all the time. But rather than reporting on all of them, they'll report on one. the one that they think is going to get the biggest response or is going to drive ratings. So, yeah, I don't necessarily think that it's meant to distract us from anything, because even the mainstream media is reporting on all of this Epstein stuff. CNN, MSNBC, they were reporting on President Trump's conversation with the Palm Beach Police Department earlier today. I mean, they can't hide it. So is kid meat kosher? Well, if it's prepared in a rabbinically approved way, I suppose. Now, in regards to that jerky, and, you know, obviously we know there's code words going on here. We saw the stuff about pizza and grape soda. Anna Paulina Luna confirms that we are actually seeing this. These are code words that are being used, and she specifically mentions the jerky aspect.
Viral mentions about the 11-year-old, 10-year-old, people sending these photos to Jeffrey Epstein. Did you uncover who sent those photos of little children?
I looked directly at the emails that have been widely circulated pertaining to the age 11, and I have it written down on my notes, the permission to kill email, the Snow White, the littlest girl was naughty, etc. And those ones were directly sent by alleged victims.
So the most disturbing.
Oh, there we go. All of those were sent by alleged victims. We're going to be looking at who some of them may be here in just a moment.
Darkest and sickest emails were sent by women to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, and some of them pertaining to, you know, jerky, whatever that is. Yeah.
And so and so just quick follow. What is jerky? Like, what is that exactly?
I think that's the question. I don't know if it's like, and again, like going into specifically just based on what this is, I don't know. It's a
code word.
Context
It has to be a code word. Nobody
it's
talks about jerky like this.
Weird. Yeah, it's a code word and it's weird, but either which way.
We have beef jerky in the studio, okay? So, like, you know, Klein and I know, I've never spoken to my team or anything. There's no correspondence to me talking about jerky this obsessively. There's hundreds of emails about jerky.
It's a code word, and some of those emails were sent by women, and women that specifically claim to be victims.
So you're saying that these victims are being groomed into
there's
becoming
evidence.
Traffickers themselves.
There's evidence of that. Yes, I'm not saying all of them.
So they're not actually victims. They're not actually victims, or they're.
I think that there are some that are actual victims, but I also think that at a certain point, if you, depending on the severity of what you're doing, I think that there's a gray area, and then you become a co-conspirator.
So that is so important, and this is something that I've talked about before. The vast majority of people who become perpetrators were victimized themselves. When you are molested or groomed or raped by adults as a child, it twists your mind, okay? And not everybody who is abused or not everybody who is molested goes on to molest, but without a significant effort to heal and understand that what was done to you was wrong and that can't be done to other people, that you don't normalize it inside your own mind, that has to happen. Because otherwise, it becomes possible for you to grow up and just think that what was done to you is normal. Oftentimes, people who are molested, their sexual appetites will change. They will, unfortunately, become fixated on the types of things that happen to them. And so I think that undoubtedly what we've seen is these girls were molested. And I know this from researching this case very early on, going back to the Palm Beach case. What you would have happen would Jeffrey Epstein would bring girls in when they were young. He would abuse them for a period of time. And then when they would sort of age out of his tastes, he would tell them that the only way they could continue to make money is if they went and recruited younger girls and brought them in. And unfortunately, these girls were doing that. We're talking about high school students in Palm Beach. We're talking about girls who had just recently graduated from high school. It is a sick and self-perpetuating, disgusting wheel that just continues rolling. And the exact same thing, think about many of the cases that I've talked about. Let's talk about Boys Town, okay? Paul Benassi. What happened to Paul Benassi was unconscionable. But he had been essentially kidnapped and molested from such a young age, he didn't know anything else. And he ended up becoming a recruiter and he was involved in the kidnapping of Johnny Gosch. He was around Johnny Gosch. Paul was deeply troubled, okay? He had disassociated from much of what was happening, and he knew that what he was involved in was wrong, but he also felt powerless to do anything about it. So I really do feel that what Anna Paulina Luna said right there is pretty relevant. You know, it's horrible. It's a crime what happens to these kids. And there is that gray area where perhaps they're mixed up. But if they don't make the right decision to pull away from it, to recognize that what is happening is so wrong and that should not be happening, then I think they do cross over into that area of becoming a co-conspirator. And I think that undoubtedly there are more than a few women who have come forward and claimed that Jeffrey Epstein abused them and that they were involved in this thing for a very long time, who went on to also become abusers themselves. And, you know, perhaps they became involved in drugs, they became involved in prostitution. And I think that it quite literally killed their soul. And they saw a point at which they could get a payday. Now, I want you to watch this video right here. This is Sarah Ransom. She's been one of the most outspoken Epstein victims. She appeared with Virginia Giuffre when the civil case was still going on. She was one of those people who got a big settlement from Jeffrey Epstein.
I have spent the last 17 years in my own prison for what she, Jeffrey, and all the co-conspirators did to me. I was raped repeatedly. I was raped 3 times a day sometimes. And I was not the only girl on that island. There was a...
Now, Sarah Ransom was an adult when this happened. If I'm not mistaken, she was like early 20s.
Constant stream of girls being raped over and over and over again. And yes, Ghislaine must die in prison because I've been in hell and back for the last 17 years.
And 27 for me.
I was 10 years old when Liz Stein was being trafficked. I was 10. That is how long the sex trafficking ring has been going on.
All right. Now, it's not to say that Sarah Ransom is not deeply affected by what happened to her. Not to say that she hasn't been profoundly damaged by the experience. But this man right here, Jay Beecher, who is a journalist, he went to Amsterdam to actually meet with Sarah Ransom. Sarah Ransom is the one who said that she had sex tapes of her being trafficked to Bill Clinton, I believe Alan Dershowitz, Prince Andrew. She's the one who just said she was raped 3 times a day, and she had these sex tapes. She actually tried to sell the sex tapes at one point, and when the buyers came to procure them, she admitted that she didn't actually have the sex tapes. She also claimed that one of David Boies' lawyers' associates had raped one of the accusers, and then she also admitted to have made that up. And when Jay Beecher revealed that he was, working on putting together an article about this, he determined that Sarah Ransom was actually working as an escort. She was listed on an escorting website, and this was during the time, while she was in her 20s, that she was actually allegedly being abused by Jeffrey Epstein. She was being paid by Jeffrey Epstein, and she was photographed multiple times on the island. She even was taking selfies of herself on the island. She was also found to have emails going back and forth to Jeffrey Epstein's assistant. She also asked if she could return to the island. And when she found that the journalist Jay Beecher was going to question her about these things or even write about them, he is saying that she sent death threats against him. And she's also now made a new claim against somebody who's a famous football player. I don't know. She also has, of course, said that the entire royal family are operating a child trafficking operation. That very well may be true. I think a lot of us think that that's possibly. She also said that Jay Beecher was working for Trump and was sent to harvest DNA from her son. I don't know about that one. I don't think Donald Trump would do that. But suffice it to say, Sarah Ransom's story appears to be more complicated than she has actually let on. And I do think that it's highly possible that in an effort to position oneself as more of a victim than perhaps they actually were, that this is a phenomenon that we may have seen on numerous occasions. All right, so just want you to keep that. Other incidents. Sarah Kellen. Sarah Kellen was another young woman who was brought into Jeffrey Epstein's orbit. She was actually listed in that FBI document as an unindicted co-conspirator. Sarah Kellen is also well represented in the emails. This is the photograph of her that was redacted in this document. Now, I don't know why Sarah Kellen would be redacted other than to say she's a woman, but she's previously been identified as somebody who was definitely a recruiter for Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know how old Sarah Kellen was when she was brought into the Epstein organization, but I know that Jeffrey Epstein's modus operandi was to recruit young, impressionable women, girls. And then once they became women, as I said earlier, they would then be turned into recruiters and they would go out and get more girls. And Jeffrey Epstein knew that a young girl is going to be more likely to trust another girl if they're going to be brought over. And then once they would be brought over, they would be told, all you got to do is give this guy a massage. He'll give you $200. After a couple of massages, then it goes up a notch. Well, all you got to do is just touch his genitals. And then maybe after you touch his genitals, well, now all you have to do is make him come. Okay. It just increases. And then eventually, well, now if you want to keep getting paid, now you're going to have to let him rape you. So, very, very awful stuff. We also have Leslie Groff, who has been identified in here. Now, I don't know why they showed Leslie Groff, but they don't show Sarah Kellen. I think Sarah Kellen is even better known for her presence in the organization than Leslie Groff. Of course, they have Ghislaine Maxwell in here. They have Jean-Luc Brunel, no picture because, of course, he's dead, I guess. Maybe this is another co-conspirator who's dead. They don't, but they also have no picture and the name is redacted. They have Les Wexner in here, as I said earlier. And then they have Karina Shuliak. We have a picture of Karina Shuliak. I don't know why they're not putting that in here. They've also redacted Karina Shuliak in videos in here. Now, Karina Shuliak was the one who was actually Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend at the time he died. He was the woman that he had a conversation with. He left her $100 million. He left her the islands. And Karina Shuliak is basically in hiding along with Nadia Marcinko. Rachel Chandler, she's not listed as one of his co-conspirators here. And she's never come forward as a victim. However, I think that a lot of people have been waiting for her name to come up. And that's allegedly and a lot of other people's opinions. We're live on YouTube right now, and Rachel Chandler does not like it when people talk about her. So I'm not saying anything about her other than people have mentioned her name. More than that, here is another one. Haley Robson. She was present that day when we saw this press conference that they did on the steps of the Capitol. Thomas Massie was standing right there with her. So Haley Robson, at 18 years old, was being paid by Jeffrey Epstein to recruit girls between 14 and 16, just like I mentioned earlier. She also referred to herself as a Heidi Fleiss type figure. Heidi Fleiss was a very, very famous madam. I don't know what she's doing nowadays, but she instructed girls to tell Jeffrey Epstein that they were 18, even though she and Jeffrey Epstein both knew that they were not 18. So this is another person presenting themselves as a survivor whom it may be a far more complicated situation than what is being admitted. Well, Alan, here's the thing. I don't know that Thomas Massie knew all of this. Thomas Massie showed up for this press conference and this photo opportunity, and all of these women presented themselves as victims of Jeffrey Epstein. They said that they were going to give him names. But as far as I can tell, Thomas Massie never cared about the Epstein files until it became a national news item. I don't think Thomas Massey is like any of us who have been investigating Jeffrey Epstein for years, a decade or more at this point. But here is another associate of Jeffrey Epstein, this time a man by the name of Bobby Kotick. He is the CEO of Activision and Blizzard. It's a video game company. They're the company that makes Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Candy Crush, Diablo, and Overwatch. And this email is from 2013. Now, what's interesting about this is that they're not talking about the sexualization of kids, but they're talking about essentially mind control over kids. He asked the question, how do we teach kids to spend money for the rest of their lives as early as possible? What's also interesting about all of these games is that they were sort of instrumental in creating the concept of what's called microtransactions. I don't play any games that require you to pay more money after you've already bought them. I don't pay to go up a level. I don't pay for skins. I don't pay for guns. I mean, they want you to buy all of these things in the game to upgrade your character. And that's what they've basically trained these kids to do, kids who have been playing video games for the last decade or more. But he says also in the email, education through games is for losers, meaning that we need to hook them on constantly playing. His name appears in these emails over 300 times. And you can see here from Jeffrey Epstein to Bobby, and he's asking for a critique of these notes on this meeting. The best scheme I've come up with so far is to use X Prize or something like that to co-opt the existing video game industry. Imagine you're looking in a door at a video game. It's got some squiggly symbols printed on it, like munchkins walk up to the door and say, "Konnichiwa." The door opens and they're greeted by a hot princess with big tits and a thong. The door closes in your face. You're going to fucking learn to read and pronounce kanji. Unleash that on 5th grade boys, and then the next thing you know, you'll have an entire generation of bilingual kids speaking Japanese to each other behind the backs of their parents and their teachers. Edutainment is for pussies. It doesn't work. Once kids catch up on that, you are teaching them something they shut down. We have to keep the boobs and guns for profit. You can see how much money video games are making these days. Fuck educational reform. We need educational subversion. He is talking about directly how to influence the minds of 13-year-old children and younger. This is an email from Pablos Holman to Jeffrey Epstein. First of all, Bobby Kotick writes to Jeffrey Epstein, again, X Prize is a good idea, but the key is real-world rewards. Learn to read, learn cell phone minutes, iPhone credits, virtual items in games. And then Pablos says, I'm all for indoctrinating kids into an economy. You gotta love how this example for real-world rewards is virtual items in games. Just trying to get as much money out of these kids. How are they going to commoditize these kids? Obviously, Jeffrey Epstein is commoditizing children as sexual objects. These guys making these video games want to commoditize these children to get money out of their parents and have their credit cards put in. Here is an email note from Mark Thompson. The New York Times company signs on to CEO action for diversity and inclusion. This is in 2018. Dear colleagues, diversity is core to our mission, and it's the right thing to do for our business. That's why you've heard AG, me, and other company leaders talk about our commitment to continued progress on diversity and inclusion. We're at work on an action plan, and we will share more details in the future. So now we've got Jeffrey Epstein tied to sexual subversion of children, monetary subversion of children, trans indoctrination, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Jeffrey Epstein was a Democrat through and through, a leftist anyways. All of the money that he gave to politicians, they were on the left. All of the causes that he's paying for, that he's supporting on the left, climate change, traditional physics, all of these paradigms to keep people locked in to a mimetic code, basically, where they just want to dish out their money and have these kids addicted to porn and guns in a video game and skins and any way that they can to get money and control the minds of these children. Absolutely disgusting. Ubisoft is close to turning the key now that their stock has tanked. I don't know anything about that. You mean that they're going to like get rid of microtransactions, or they're going to force microtransactions. Surter says, I met Heidi Fleiss in the mid-90s. She had a clothing store on 3rd Street Promenade here in Santa Monica called Heidi Wear. It's gone now, but I think that's what she is doing now. I know that she like tried to write a book or something at one point in the past, or maybe she was going to be in a movie. I don't know. All right, real briefly, we have another special message from my friends over here on Rumble. You guys, if you still have not tried 1775 coffee, now's your shot. The 1775 starter kits still are available, and in those kits, you're going to get their bold dark roast that hits hard like a left hook, or right hook, as it were, the smooth medium roast, which goes down a treat, and their Vitality Mushroom Coffee, which gives you that clean energy and laser focus, but no crash. All of it is made from the highest quality beans available. Single origin, small batch, toxin and mold free. You're also going to get a gold spoon clip, a very strong frother, and a black 1775 tumbler. It's a great deal, $170 worth of coffee and gear, and it's all yours for $99. This is for the people who have been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble and wonder if it's actually worth it. Spoiler alert, it truly is. So head on over to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab that starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. Now, if you're on Rumble, you can use that QR code that you see on screen. If you're not on Rumble, you can head on over to 1775coffee.com/studio, or on Rumble, use that link in the chat. Thank you very much to Rumble. All right, now, we also have this strange and interesting email just kind of expanding on the idea that Jeffrey Epstein was interested in eugenics and transhumanism and life extension. This is an email from a conversation he was having with Soon-Yi Previn. Woody Allen's previously was his daughter, became his wife as soon as she turned 18 when he left Mia Farrow. And it turns out that he had been abusing this child the entire time that she was the adopted daughter of Mia Farrow. Strangely enough, or probably intentionally, Woody Allen never adopted Soon-Yi Previn as his own daughter. It was always his adopted stepdaughter. And it was probably because he knew that it would be easier to transition into her role as his wife once she became an adult and everything could be made official. But in this email, Jeffrey Epstein is emailing Woody and Soon-Yi, and he says, I think Woody would really enjoy meeting my bio wizard, who has figured out a way to keep dogs alive for 100 years or more. Separate from Woody hating dogs, there is a hope to be able to do greatly extended human lifetime within a decade. Now, this was 2014. This technology may now be available to the rich and famous. It's certainly not available to you and I. I will set a dinner. Could you find out today if it would be a good movie lesson day, 2 o'clock or so, or tomorrow? And she replies and says, we'll check and see if today is possible for you to see the movie, or tomorrow. I will have Ginny get back to you, sent from Soon-Yi's iPhone. But 100 years. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to have your dogs live 100 years if you're not living 100 years. Hazel Kitty says, Woody turned everyone against Mia and she was right. Really? I always thought that Woody Allen, I mean, I was surprised that Woody Allen didn't get more blowback, but it seemed like I used to love Woody Allen movies when I was a kid. I thought they were so funny. And then when this happened, I was like, my God, I never watched a Woody Allen movie ever again. But I felt like, you know, even though it was obvious that it was disgusting, he basically just kind of didn't do a movie for a couple of years. And then he started doing it again, and nobody said anything about it. I know that, I guess Mia Farrow didn't really keep working, but I don't know, like how the stuff went down behind the background. Absolutely disgusting. Okay, now, we also have this little bit of information. Turns out that Jeffrey Epstein had a gynecologist on retainer because, as you realize, he was dealing with a lot of young women, both girls and young women, who would have the need to visit a gynecologist on the regular basis. We've seen several of these emails which seem to indicate that Jeffrey Epstein, or the men that he was trafficking these girls to, were leaving their encounters with, at times, sexual transmitted diseases and stuff. But someone emails Jeffrey Epstein and says, do you remember the name of the gynecologist that you used to send your victims to? So obviously, whoever sent this email to Jeffrey Epstein was aware that he was not just sleeping with a lot of young women. He was actually victimizing girls and women alike. But do you remember the name of the gynecologist you used to send your victims to? Now, that is redacted. So again, I don't know if that is a famous person. I don't know if that's a supposed victim, etc. But that shit needs to be unredacted. We need to know who in 2012 was emailing Jeffrey Epstein asking for a referral to his victim's gynecologist. Now, Jeffrey responds and says, yes, many years ago, you used to send them to a gyno in New York who once commented something to the effect that you were keeping him in business single-handedly. So how would it be possible that Jeffrey Epstein would have enough victims to send to this gynecologist that this guy wouldn't need to see anybody else? That's a lot of girls, a lot of possible victims that were being sent there. Now, the fact that he replies that you used to send them to a gyno in New York leads me to believe that this has got to be one of those women who have been identified as an assistant of sorts. So either Sarah Kellen, maybe Nadia Marcinko, might be Karina Shuliak, could be any of those girls right there. But we also know at least if Jeffrey Epstein had one or more gynecologists, this one is not in New York, but this is definitely one that Jeffrey Epstein had on retainer. This is gynecologist Mark Landon, and he is a physician at a Ohio State health clinic that is named after Les Wexner, because, of course, Wexner was a big fixture in Ohio. He owned a massive piece of property with a palatial estate. He gave or sold Jeffrey Epstein a plot that was also just as massive directly next door to it, and he and Jeffrey were basically right next door to each other when they were in Ohio at the same time. But Mark Landon is still a gynecologist and a professor at Ohio State University. He has not been fired by them, and as it is reported, he was being paid $25,000 a quarter, so $100,000 a year to be the personal gynecologist for Jeffrey Epstein and his victims. So I don't know. You might want to call Ohio State. You might want to call the Les Wexner Medical Center where Dr. Landon is employed and ask them if they plan to continue keeping him on staff. I mean, knowing that Les Wexner is the namesake of this location, I don't think they're going to fire him, but I think they could probably get some phone calls and some emails. Now, this one is what I plan to do tonight. So if you'll remember, going back to the posts, you may or may not remember, you may or may not be familiar with the idea of steganography, hiding messages within pictures. All right. It appears that at least some of the images that are included from this Epstein file document dump contain hidden information. Now, this girl went through and found that several of them contain hidden links. What you need to do is open the picture up in a photo editing program, and then you can drag your mouse over it like you're trying to highlight text. If there is hidden text in the image, it will highlight, and then you can copy it, and then you can paste it into a browser. Take a look at this.
Okay, so I'm going through the Epstein files, and I was using my phone on my iPad before this, so sorry that I'm already at file 600. I'm not going to backtrack. But I found these invisible, they're literal links that blend in with the picture. And if we go over here and we search these things, this is fitra. It's an Islamic belief that children will become Christian, Jews, or members of different faith. It's a Islamic belief. Why that's linked to this picture.
So Mullins, who is Swissy? What is Swissy? Because that word is not something I'm familiar with. Are you talking about the Swiss bankers?
One of Epstein's bathrooms. I couldn't tell you. This is picture 605.
So this is particularly notable because you've got many emails that are sent which appear to just be images, all right, with no corresponding text, no message or anything like that. But using a concept such as this, Swiss cheese, it becomes possible to send information that you wish to convey, but not making it obvious. So if somebody is just looking at these emails and they only look at it and see it's a picture, it's an innocuous picture of a bathroom. Why is somebody sending a picture of a bathroom? Well, they're not sending a picture of a bathroom. They're sending a picture of a bathroom with this document with information embedded in it. Now, there are a number of different ways that you can hide information in a picture. It can be encoded in such a way that it has to be decoded and extracted. This is probably the least technologically savvy way of doing it, but it is certainly a way to do it.
This picture 614, tiny right here, this shite. Search this. Where have they been? I don't know.
Now, Roblox is particularly interesting because they've gotten into a lot of hot water recently because they have a massive problem with pedophiles on Roblox who have been indoctrinating and grooming kids. So this seems to indicate that back in 2013 or whatever, these people were already aware that Roblox was a great place to go if you wanted to scoop up some children.
Talking to kids, manipulating kids, getting them to do like suicide things, sewer slide things, you know what I'm saying? Lots of PDFs on there. Yeah, why is there well, I guess that makes sense as to why there's a link, but like why? Huh? Why specifically, like, you know what I'm saying? Are these little like drip fed information that we're getting? Look, I found this link right here. Tiny, just in the fabric of this curtain. 14. This is them mocking, I believe, I could be wrong, mocking this fucking quote. I read this one that freaked me out. Do not let your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. If it were not so, I would have told you. For I go to prepare a place for you. If I go prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Which is like them, I assume, eating kids. Receive you to myself. I feel like they're using that very punnily. Okay, that was picture 6.
Yeah, this is some as above, so below type stuff. The inversion of God's word.
Let's go to 6:30.
All right. So tonight, this is going to be what I plan on doing, is going through all of these pictures and seeing just how many I can find that have some form of steganography in them. And hopefully I'll be able to bring that to you guys tomorrow. Oh, continuing. You probably remember this. Jeffrey Epstein's temple years ago in the posts. There was this photo shared by Q. Symbolism will be their downfall, directly linking Jeffrey Epstein's temple on the island to this Syrian temple in Aleppo. Well, we also have Jeffrey Epstein and one of his friends, Ion Nicola, sharing the exact same photo on June 11th of 2013, where Epstein says, "So today we continue drawing the rocks. I think it looks pretty good. What do you think? Once we'll have all the rocks drawn, we can paint the rocks. Maybe it's better to draw all the building first and then we start painting. Painting it would be easier because we don't have to do measurements and taping. I built the arch like in Mom Look architecture style with 2 arches. If you find some design from the inside door, please send it to me so I can reproduce. We saw a nice design for the top door arch inside here, but I can't find it. Thank you, Ion." A confirmation that, yes, in fact, this is exactly what Jeffrey Epstein had styled this temple on. Oh, man. Also, this one hit home kind of hard. Justice was my daughter's favorite store when she was a little kid. because the clothes were cute, they were cheap, and she just loved wearing this stuff. It was a company that was an L Brands company. It was, I believe it was like basically the kids version of like Limited or something like that. There was like Limited, Limited 2, and Justice. And Justice was the kids version, all right? Cute clothes, good stuff for little girls, fairly high quality, and it was stylish. Well, it turns out that in 2001, June 5th, 2001, Les Wexner transferred ownership of Two, which was the LLC that owned certain assets under the L Brands clothing line, which included Justice. It was transferred to Jeffrey Epstein. I sent my daughter this picture. Well, Justice is no longer around. It filed for bankruptcy several years ago. But I sent this to my daughter this morning, and I was like, honey, we were inadvertently supporting a child sex trafficker when you were a kid because we were shopping at Justice. Of course, we couldn't have known. But it just goes to show you that these people are massively mixed up in the corporate world. And there we go. Another part of the Les Wexner empire. It was a Jeffrey Epstein empire this entire time. Didn't even know it. I knew at one time that it was owned by Les Wexner and L Brands, but never knew that it was transferred to Jeffrey Epstein. All right, so now we are going to move beyond Jeffrey Epstein, and we're going to look at some additional arrests of people like Jeffrey Epstein that have just been announced. Bloomington, Indiana police have just announced the arrest of an employee of the Department of Defense in a bust on a sex trafficking ring. The police chief has announced that this guy who was arrested, his job was to do the background checks and security clearance checks on ICE agents. Considering that he was also a pedophile, I wonder if he also wasn't passing this information on to Antifa networks and radical left-wing networks, because I believe, I'm sorry, not Bloomington, Indiana, Bloomington, Minnesota. So I wonder if he was passing this information on. Now, this is over an hour long, and the arrest of this guy is just one of many.
Yeah, I don't know, I butcher names all the time. From St. Paul, we locked him up. Mr. Gilbert Berlali, he is a IT worker for Hennepin County. And he loves to look for the big booty Latinas. Well, looking for the big booty Latinas.
I feel like this guy is based because the big booty Latinas line is, what's his name? Alex, the comedian. He's always like, big booty Latinas. He shows up to the city council meetings.
Got you locked up, man. Next, Asim Javard out of Richfield. You're close to Bloomington.
Alex Stein, yes, Alex Stein. Big booty Latinas. They can
You should
stay.
know better, too. Miguel Quinala out of St. Paul. We locked him up, too. Eugene Okari. Sorry, there's like 30 of these guys. Eugene Okari out of Brooklyn Park. We locked him up. Mr. Mark Kevin Johnson is formerly a man of the cloth. This is not his first go-around either. He was convicted of prostitution, of soliciting a prostitute in 2016, and I think he was arrested in 2007. So obviously he ain't learned his lesson either. Carlos Guzman, Minneapolis, we locked him up. Farhad Saeed, we don't know where he's from yet, so
He's from Somalia. I can tell you right now just looking at him.
Still trying to figure that out, but he's 20 years old. He got locked up. Mohammed Ali, he
got another Somali.
Was a member of a law enforcement organization in a civilian capacity. I think it was Metro Transit. So we've locked him up too. And I think they probably parted ways with him or starting some investigation with him and his employment. William Lima out of Brooklyn Center. We locked him up. And my man travels all the way up here from Florida. Delamine Beckman. He hails from Port St. Lucie. I know it's cold up here in Minnesota. You want to get warm, dude, but don't come to my city trying to pay for it. That's where he got locked up. Karate Cannon, we locked him up, and he was concerned about the well-being of the sex worker due to the alleged size of his genitalia. Well, come on. Next, Samuel Nargin. Some of you may remember him. He was featured in a Star Tribune article in 2022 as a coffee. We call him the coffee man. He likes VIP coffee, and he does a lot with coffee. Well, we don't brew coffee in the jail, but we do give you a Jimmy Dean's breakfast sandwich. Mr. Brashad Johnson, out of Maple Grove. This is the most disturbing arrest that we've had here. He is a backgrounder for ICE, Homeland Security, and federal agencies. So when you're getting your security clearance, this is one of the guys that does your backgrounds.
Damn.
Which is kind of scary. So we locked him up. And I think if you're going to be, these people get access, they get a high security clearance, right? Because again, for all the ICE agents, Homeland Security agents, and people getting security clearance, this is one of the people that does the backgrounds. And you come here trying to purchase sex.
He should have had better OPSEC, should not have been doing it in the first place. Anyways, I just wanted to get to the point where we saw that guy. Man, here is another one, because we have another federal agent, Homeland Security, being charged with the production of child pornography. This was just in June of last year. That was him right there. Man, Timothy Gregg, they also call him the Neck. Jeez, oh, Pete's, his neck is wider than the top of his head. He was arrested after images of the abuse were found on his phone. Again, check your OPSEC. Glad that he didn't, though. Then we have another ICE employee caught in Bloomington for trying to convince a minor. This was back in December. This one also fell through the cracks. A civil employee of ICE is now facing federal criminal charges for trying to coerce a minor. His name was Stephen Beck, and he was strung up in Operation Creep. There were 16 arrests then, and officers were posing as 17-year-old girls. And Mr. Beck thought it would be a good idea to forget his oath. Need to say thank you to Renee Simmel. She says, sorry I missed your birthday, Lisa, and sorry you were not feeling well. Thank you again for all you guys do for us. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Mighty Patriot, thank you for the shades. Have they called Mrs. Cheney? I already read that one. I already read that. Okay. We also have, thanks to the efforts of President Trump and the administration, a registered sex offender who paid smugglers to bring a child across the border from Honduras, and luckily they were stopped from successfully delivering this very young girl into his care, because if it wasn't for President Trump and the crackdown on the sponsorship program for unaccompanied alien children, if this was the Biden regime, this kid would have been delivered directly into this guy's hands. Remember, there were a lot of sex offenders who had successfully put themselves into the unaccompanied alien children program, and this is why we have 300,000 plus children who went missing. Now, according to the court documents, this small girl made the journey with her mother, but they were separated intentionally before crossing. The kid was rescued before she ended up in the hands of Douglas Price, who was a man in Alaska. He was also a registered sex offender with a long pre-existing rap sheet. Now, Mr. Price paid $5,000 to fund the mother and daughter's journey to the border. He sent payments from his business, which is called Black Bear Construction. He sent the funds to a phone number that was provided by the smugglers. Price also sent photographs of himself to the mother and inquired about her daughter's status. You can see the $5,000 payment, which appears to be sent through Zelle. It was sent to Carlos Palma from Black Bear Construction. Here are the messages where Doug is in conversation with the smuggler. Contact these people so they know you're looking for someone, please. He sends this official phone number. They called me the social worker because the girl didn't have any documents. Please send me information, and also ready to cross the border, Doug. Then he sends some other link. Send me a picture of her passport so that I will have her info. The smuggler says, I could not process the passport because there were no appointments available at the embassy for this month of January, so I'm going to take it out until I get to the United States. I'm going to send you the birth certificate, and then he sends the birth information of this child. She was born in 2011, so that would make her 15 years old. I will send the photo of the birth certificate tomorrow. Then Doug sends his address of where this child is to be delivered. And he says, don't answer me on a crossroads. And it looks like this is them getting into a raft about to cross the river and cross into the United States of America. Here is, again, the pictures of that creep. 2 pictures of him. This one appears to be the one that was sent to identify him. And then this is a picture that was taken from his social media. So we got him, boys. We got him. He is not going to get his hands on those poor children. We also have a major child sex trafficking network that was broken up in Senegal. 14 individuals arrested in Senegal. And this is really going to kill you guys. So in order to traffic these children and keep them under their control, they infected more than 150 children with AIDS so that they could keep them in this pedophile criminal network. It was partially being run by a man by the name of Pierre French. He was a French national, Pierre Robert. Pierre Robert was a French national operating this pedo trafficking ring in Senegal. This is the second time in 6 months that a French citizen was caught ordering kids and their rape in different parts of Africa. Here you have the article showing the Senegalese trafficking network. It was international. People were coming and going from Senegal because obviously Africa is not as stable as a Western nation. And Mr. Roberts was offering this organized child trafficking. Now, the other one in July of 2025, it was a former French spy who was also organizing a international child rape ring. This happened in numerous places in Africa, but this particular trafficking network was largely based out of Kenya. So these kids were pimped out. They were raped. Many of them were under the age of 15. Cases of sodomy, intentional transmission of HIV and AIDS. I don't know if the intentional transmission of HIV and AIDS was so that these children would be dependent upon their abusers for medication so that they didn't die, or if this is some type of sick fetish that people have, the idea of raping a child and giving them AIDS. I don't know, but this is just fucking awful. Pardon my French, but that one really, really upsets me. All right, now I promised an update on Kurt Cobain. Somebody in the chat had mentioned earlier that Courtney Love was, implicated in Kurt Cobain's death. Well, this person, who is a journalist I've never heard of, says that Courtney Love was sex trafficked by individuals with CIA connections. When Kurt moved to divorce her, they're the ones who decided to have him killed. His death ensured that she would control his share of Nirvana's publishing rights, which were at that time worth more than $250 million. There was also allegedly a detective in Seattle who was looking into where Kurt got his drugs that were in his system that night, and he was allegedly murdered as well. The reason this is coming up again is because an independent investigation into the murder of Kurt Cobain was done, and that independent investigation has determined that Kurt Cobain was, of course, killed. Now, I would suggest if you really want to deep dive on this subject, I did a Baseless Conspiracies about this with John, where I presented a case for Kurt Cobain having been murdered. It is also my opinion that Kurt Cobain was murdered based upon so many different factors, whether it's the amount of drugs that was in his system or the type of gun that was used to kill him, or the forensic evidence that was at the scene, or the behavior of the people around him. There are so many different things to indicate that, yes, in fact, Kurt Cobain was murdered. So, looking at this new investigation, the King County Medical Examiner, of course, ruled that his death was a suicide. But the problem is that the gun was a Remington Model 11 12-gauge shotgun. A private forensic team of scientists have taken a look at the autopsy and the materials from the crime scene, and a specialist by the name of Brian Burnett, who specializes in gunshot trauma, was also part of the team. Another researcher by the name of Michelle Wilkins, working on the team, said that after they looked at this evidence for just 3 days with fresh eyes, they said, it's obvious this is a homicide. We got to do something about this. And the peer-reviewed paper that they wrote presents 10 points of evidence which argue that Kurt Cobain was, in fact, murdered and did not commit suicide. As I presented previously, Kurt Cobain appeared to have been given a hot shot, a forced overdose of heroin to incapacitate him. The evidence shows that the injection site in his arm was not given willingly. There appeared to be damage to his arm where he had perhaps struggled and attempted to get away. The injection blew right through his vein, and it doesn't matter. You may or may not know, but if you are a heroin addict, you obviously want to get it directly in your vein because then it's going to stay in your bloodstream and it's going to go immediately through your body. If you miss your vein and you just inject a large amount of heroin into someone's arm, some of that is going to go directly into your bloodstream, but it's going to end up eventually soaking into your body through the injection site. And if you are overdosed on heroin, it's still going to happen rather quickly because it's just too much for your body to handle. Also the length of the gun, it was too long for it to be placed in his arms. The suicide note, a portion of the note appears to be written by Kurt Cobain. Most of the note does not appear to be written by Kurt Cobain. The autopsy that they did initially, it did not line up with the evidence that was there. There was organ damage that was associated with oxygen deprivation to Kurt's body. The necrosis of the brain and liver happens in an overdose. That does not happen in a shotgun death. So what most likely happened, Kurt was given that overdose. They then held a pillow over his face or something like that. He fully died. And then they themselves shot him after his death had already occurred. Take a look at this gun. Look how long this gun is. And tell me, and also the wrong hand. Kurt, I don't remember if he was left or right-handed, but it was the other hand that allegedly, the gun was found in. So this gun is far too long to be able to use to shoot yourself. It simply doesn't make sense. The guy, Burnett, who is part of this team, he's been involved in many, many cases over the years. He's internationally recognized. He's done a lot of controversial cases. And a spokesperson for the medical office in King County said that they worked with local law enforcement. They conducted a full autopsy, and they followed all of the appropriate procedures to come to the determination that the death was a suicide. Our office is always open to revisiting their conclusions if new evidence comes to light. But we see nothing to date that would warrant reopening this case and reevaluating our previous determination. A spokesperson from the Seattle PD said that they are not going to reopen the case. Our detective concluded that he died by suicide, and this continues to be the position held by the department. The Daily Mail reviewed the autopsy, and it described how his body was found on the floor of the greenhouse above his garage. Examination of the miscellaneous papers in the front pocket of Cobain's jeans reveals some writing in black ink reading Remington 20 gauge 2 3/4 inch shells or shorter light setup 1088925. And Wilkins said to me, it looks like someone staged a movie and wanted you to be absolutely certain that this was a suicide. The receipt for the gun was in his pocket. The receipt for the shells in his other pocket. The shells are lined up at his feet. And right here, the placement of his hands and the lack of blood spatter also raised further questions. If Kurt Cobain had been the one holding the gun, where he was holding the gun, boom, there would have been more to it. And again, the length. The new forensic report shows that Cobain's sleeves were rolled back and the heroin kit was found several feet away, containing cap syringes, cotton buds, and a piece of black heroin, roughly equal size. We're supposed to believe he capped the needles and put everything back in order after shooting up 3 times, because that's what someone does while they are dying. Suicides are messy, and this was a very clean scene. Police on the investigation said Cobain injected him with 10 times the normal amount even a heavy heroin user would have done. I'd also like to remind you, Kurt Cobain had just gotten out of rehab. He was also an experienced heroin user. You, as a heroin user, understand how much is required to get you high before you go to rehab, and you would also be aware that after all of that heroin leaving your system, it would not be necessary to use anywhere near as much heroin as you would have used previously. So the amount of heroin that it would require would maybe be a quarter, maybe less, a tenth of what it would have been when Kurt went into rehab. So for him to use 10 times the amount that a heavy addict would have to take to kill them, it could, it would be a lot. It would be a lot. Cobain's autopsy showed fluid in his lungs, bleeding in his eyes, and damage to the liver and brain, almost as if he had been assaulted, perhaps beforehand. This would be, again, unusual for a quick gunshot death, but can be very common in heroin overdoses. Your breathing slows down, your blood flow slows down, and in gunshot deaths, blood is often drawn into the airways, but there's no blood in the airways because Kurt was not breathing, in my opinion, at the time that he was shot. Brain injuries can sometimes stop breathing. This usually happens shortly after the trauma. Even with such a severe injury, you're still going to get some blood into the airwaves. Of course, the face was basically blown off. So all of that blood would have gone down into his airway as his body continued to breathe automatically. The autopsy report suggested his brainstem, which is what controls breathing, was not damaged. So his breathing, again, would have continued. His arm position indicated he did not have a rigid posture, which is also usually seen with a brainstem injury. The forensic paper underwent peer review through the editorial process at the Journal of Forensic Science. They accepted it. It was published. Wilkins argued that Cobain may have been physically incapacitated before the fatal gunshot. And again, I think that that is the most likely situation that could have taken place. All right, now, the final story I want to talk about, and then we're going to go ahead and go. We're not going to watch this, but I'm sure you remember the ouster of James O'Keefe at Project Veritas. A man by the name of Matthew Termond seemed to orchestrate a coup. Eventually, when they pushed James out, they didn't fire him. They put him on indefinite leave, meaning that they took all of his power away. They wouldn't allow him to work at Project Veritas, but they weren't firing him. They were simply going to keep him around, essentially sidelining him and stopping him from having anything to do with the company that he started. Of course, that is unacceptable. So James said, "You are effectively firing me. I'm not going to just sit around and allow you to make me irrelevant." So he left and he started O'Keefe Media Group. They have now gotten Matthew Termond on tape admitting to being a federal asset. He said that he has specifically been used by the SDNY and the FBI to take over conservative organizations and subvert them. He also said in his undercover, I can't believe that they got Matthew Termond, the man who destroyed Project Veritas and kicked James O'Keefe out. They got him into a honeypot scheme, just like they get all of the other retards working for the deep state. Matthew Termond really should have known better. I would kill James O'Keefe, he said, because he's one of the most evil people I've ever known. I have 1,000 sources in the DOJ and the CIA that I can talk to at any time. I've already fed the Southern District tons of shit on James O'Keefe. So this undercover journalist met with Termond, a former Project Veritas board member, to uncover the truth about his removal from Project Veritas. On February 6th, 2023, I was indefinitely suspended by Project Veritas, the organization I founded. And he says, Termond has long denied working against me, but finally admitted on hidden camera he served as an SDNY informant, providing information about me, and also admitted to acting as an FBI informant. My team and I received violent threats from Termond. I saw my own eyes, bullet holes in my book through my heart, and he threatened that he wanted to kill me. Termond advises and solicits investments from several companies, including some in pharmaceuticals, and did so while on the Project Veritas board, including Cathade, Lester, MTTC1 Venture, Matt Termond, LLC, and ClaimFound. His broker check report shows he is employed by Bradley Woods and Company Limited in New York. So we're going to see just the opening portion of this, and then we're going to close out. Actually, yeah, here we go.
But don't you feel bad because he was your friend?
I would kill him because he is one of the most evil people I've ever known.
So this guy shot up my book and bragged that he wants to kill me. There's a bullet right through my heart.
The second I saw him get shot, I wished, that was my immediate first reaction, was why couldn't it have been okay?
The 1,000 sources in the DOJ and CIA I talk to all the time. Okay. That's why I fed the Southern District tons of shit to try and get him in prison.
So could you tell us the truth about who you fed dirt to SDNY? And you're a rat. You're an FBI informant.
No, because I have no idea what you're talking about. I've already fed the Southern District tons of shit on him.
Could you tell us more about how you said you were a confidential informant to the SDNY?
About you?
Who did you feed SDNY information? You went to the FBI, Matt. You're a rat.
You are the most evil motherfucker I've ever met.
But I'm not a rat.
You know who I've talked to about all of your criminal activity? Everybody who would listen. The IRS and other agencies.
So you did go to the FBI?
I have talked to many people who have called me from law enforcement agencies.
Who did you feed the Southern District of New York tons of shit, Matthew?
When people called me and asked me questions about you, I answered them truthfully and honestly.
So we have Matt Tierman is on tape admitting to be an FBI informant. He's the first time breaking news. This is pretty nuts, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, well, that's my property.
This doesn't look good for you, bro. You shot me in the heart. You say you want to kill me. I mean, a lot of people find that pretty concerning. You said when Charlie Kirk died, you wished. No, we're gonna file a restraining order against you. So is that projection? Is that
my property?
No, that's my book.
No, it's not.
If you touch me, we have security, and they're gonna.
That's
Matt,
my property.
Matt. 3 years ago, on
Matt Termond is a certified.
You sure about that?
Certified piece of shit. Now, I am so happy to see Matt Termond getting exposed. Now, I do want to say that there are people who work with the government for the right reasons, like Donald Trump going to the police or going to the FBI about Jeffrey Epstein. That's a way to work with the government because you want to make sure that somebody who is breaking the law, doing something horrendous, is going to pay for their crimes. Matt Termond specifically sought to try to destroy James O'Keefe, not because he did anything wrong, but because he hated him and he wanted to take down his organization from the inside. Hey, Would You Blow Me says, if it's proven Epstein was an intelligence asset or agent, everyone he talked to in the agency is as guilty as him. I mean, it has been proven. Jeffrey Epstein had a relationship with a number of government agencies, whether it be the FBI, the CIA, etc. But the government, unfortunately, has a habit of allowing bad people to do bad things so that they can do bad things themselves, or so that they can fund their own black off-book projects. If you'll remember, going back to Jeffrey Epstein's start in the financial world, he worked for Adnan Khashoggi. Adnan Khashoggi was the one who was laundering money for Iran-Contra. Iran-Contra was being run by Oliver North and people at the CIA. Jeffrey Epstein, I don't know that he was doing child trafficking at that point. Could be that he already was involved in that. But he seems to have a long-standing relationship with the CIA. And don't forget that these organizations, these organizational structures are highly compartmentalized. So you could have, I mean, the CIA is obviously made up of a lot of people. but everybody doesn't know what everybody else is doing. And for the most part, most people don't know what anybody else is doing, because that way they have plausible deniability, and that way they are only focusing on the one thing that they're doing. And that way they can't be compromised to give information on somebody else's business. But 100%, it's already been confirmed. Jeffrey Epstein belonged to intelligence. And I think that the people that we need to go after are the people that were Jeffrey Epstein's handlers and official contacts, and all of the people that Jeffrey Epstein was compromising inside the government and outside the government. There are so many people that connect to this, you guys. It's absolutely unconscionable. Very briefly before we go, one final message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, you have probably noticed that Rumble is growing fast. They're not slowing down anytime soon. They're building a real alternative to big tech that puts creators first and actually protects free speech. And now there is Rumble Premium. It's an easy way to upgrade your experience, because with Premium, you get ad-free viewing across the platform, no pre-rolls, no interruptions, just the content that you came for, plus Premium members unlock exclusive content like bonus videos, behind-the-scenes drops, and a lot more from your favorite creators. This weekend on Sunday, I'm going to be playing some video games. If you want to come chill out, or if you want to play with me, you can do that as well. Right now, Rumble is offering $10 off an annual subscription. To take advantage of it, just go to rumble.com/premium and use the promo code STUDIO at checkout. Once again, that's rumble.com/premium, promo code STUDIO, no ads, more freedom, and the content you actually care about. That's the deal. If you are on Rumble, you can use the QR code that you see on screen, or no matter where you might be, head to rumble.com/premium and get that $10 off an annual subscription. Thank you very much to them. Let us go through the final thank yous over here. I want to make sure that I did it. Okay, so G. Fontes says a Remington 11 is almost 50 inches long, 45 to 49. That's a damn long reach from the end of the barrel. DK Metcalf, Seahawks, WR with NFL's longest arms are under 35 inches. Each with wingspan is around 83 inches. Yeah, totally impossible for anybody to do that. Warrior Mima, thank you. She says, Zach, thank you for all your hard work. You're the best. Renee, thank you again for that generous donation. Thank you again to G. Fontes. Actually, I didn't read this one. G. Fontes says, Fleiss is in movies and TV projects as herself for small roles, such as herself in Pauly Shore is Dead, 2004. Funny fact, I was in Pauly Shore is Dead in 2004, but I never saw Heidi Fleiss. I was an extra in Pauly Shore is Dead. Voice for Fluffy in Porn Dogs, The Adventure of Sadie. Never heard of that one. Documentaries and more. Okay. Surtur, thanks again. Wounds Are Us, thanks again. Jep863, thanks again. Sandasan says, I can hear Walter. Okay, I did read that one. Thanks again. Thomas Times, thanks again. FOJC TV, thanks again. And Will to Push Forward, thanks again. AOB, thanks again. Lee Walden, thank you 2 times. Appreciate that. And everybody over there on Pilled, thank you as well. I'm going to go ahead and pass out these gold pills. I'm going to have to figure out what happened with that person in the chat that chirped up and talked shit to my wife, because I saw that they got booted. And let me just remind you, you don't come into a man's house and tell his wife that she's a bitch, because you're probably going to get kicked out. Go ahead and set up a raid for y'all over here, and we'll see you later. Don't forget about the final sponsors of the program, my friends over here at tamaracgarden.com, where they make natural American-made products, all of them from herbal supplements to tinctures and balms, lip gloss, not lip gloss, lip balm, but all of it homeopathic remedies that are made by an American family that are actually produced and sourced in America right there on their property. To take advantage of this offer, head to tamaracgarden.com / use the code RP78 and you'll get $10 off your order. All of this is incredible stuff, and obviously I don't use medications from the doctor, so this is an incredible resource for me. Also, my friends at onenessdrops.com / redpill78. When you use that code, you'll get 15% off your order. And this is where you can get the chlorine dioxide water purification kits, as well as the DMSO. DMSO is incredible for my aches and pains. It increases blood flow, and you can use it on so many different things. You wouldn't even think about it. But they also have mullein extract for lung health and soursop extract for cellular health. You can also get their bundles, which will give you a discount, and then use my discount on top to get an additional 15% off. Definitely check them out. Also, mypillow.com. Use code RP78 to save up to 80% off of Mike Lindell's amazing American-made products. They have a winter super sale going on right now. You will also be supporting Mike's gubernatorial run in Minnesota. And my good friend Jordan at consciousstrength.net/RP78. You will save 10% off of Jordan's American-made products there. This is where I get my methylene blue. It's a nootropic, and it increases the growth of neurons in your brain. It is an incredible product, and I would definitely recommend using it as long as you check for contraindications based upon anything else that you might be taking currently. The Shilajit gummies also include ashwagandha and sea moss. Those are great. And finally, my friends over at rncstore.com/RP78, where you can get Laetrile, B17, apricot seeds. They sell the apricot seeds in raw form, in meal form, and also they have just apricot oil products as well. So thank you very much for supporting this show and the sponsors of this show. Good luck. God bless. I'll see you tomorrow right here at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Peace. I'm going to send you guys over to Brad and Abby Live, just so you know. Brad and Abby Live. Say hello to them for me. Looks like they're doing some live dives right now. Tell them I love them.